So actually.
Okay.
Oh, no, you're fine. So you're doing virtual and.
Yeah, they're gonna do it on Zoom too. I don't know. Are y'all gonna tape it as well?
Is Sunny gonna be here today?
Yeah. Do what?
Is Sunny gonna be here today?
No, she had a death in the family, actually. Her husband's sister up in somewhere up north passed away. And so she won't be coming back until tomorrow.
Okay.
So I get to wear two hats today. I was still going to put her information up there in case, that was from the last time I taught the class. So we wanted to go with that. So is this the first one?
First class?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, they said they had a big crowd last week. Were you guys here? And hi, I'm Scott.
I'm Tony.
Tony, nice to see you. Nice having you with us. I was going to say, and it was Derek, correct? Derek and Andrew, were y'all here last week?
I was here for Tuesday and Thursday.
No. Okay, so you were here for both classes?
Tuesday was a good size class.
Yeah, that's what I had come by Kayla and I sat down, what was it, last Wednesday, just to make sure we did a quick run through of this class, because she's going to be my computer helper. Because it's hard for me to try to talk through and do the computer and her doing the Zoom and all that. There's way too much technology going on for this old boy, that's for sure. So. All right. I was gonna say, are we, you think they're there? Yeah, we got 9 o'clock. So if I'm ready to roll if they are, and I know you guys are. I'm kind of a stickler for time. Yeah, imagine that. Heather knows me well. Imagine that I'd be a little OCD about something there, huh? Exactly. That's it. Good morning. How are you? Oh, you're good. Come on in. Make yourself at home. She knows me already. No, you're good. I'm Scott, by the way. Kate, nice to meet you too. So Kayla, how we looking? Is everybody live? And you can hear me okay on your earbud there? Everything good? All right. So we'll go ahead and get started then. I'm going to make sure for you guys on Zoom, I'm just giving a thumbs up. Y'all hear me okay?
Yes, we do.
All right, good deal. Well, I appreciate you guys being here. My name is Scott Harden. I've got my information here on the board for you. I am an agent with RE/MAX Premier Properties here in town. I've been doing this for a while, and I'll give you a little bit of background because I like to say it this way, that I don't care what part of the business you think you're going to do or you want to do. Number one is you never know where it's going to go. And number two is that if you get into a situation to where you have questions, I'm going to say that I've been through a lot of situations. This is year number 26 being in the business. I've loved it. It's definitely been something I've enjoyed. I still enjoy doing it. I enjoy teaching though, because I was originally a teacher. So this brings me back to where I like to be. And when the whole COVID thing hit last year, I was not able to teach CE classes, which is something that I do and I love doing. And so it's kind of nice to be back. So I appreciate y'all being here today. And I appreciate the guys on Zoom that are able to check in with us as well. So we normally have 2 agents here, and it's also where the only thing I probably haven't done in the real estate business is be an owner. And I have been broker in charge, but anyway, we'll get into that. But as far as Sony Ryder, Sony is normally here. She is with RE/MAX Choice over on Sycamore Dairy Road, but Sony's husband's sister passed away. And so they are at the funeral. I don't remember exactly where it is up north. I believe it's in Michigan. But of course, she was not able to get back for the class today. We don't have anyone right now that kind of is auditing this class. We do have someone, I think Jalissa Jumper is thinking about auditing this class so that if one of us have this situation happen, but it's okay. I work with buyers and sellers. It's just kind of nice that if I'm having on the buyer hat, somebody else have on the seller hat, because it's a whole different world if you're in dual agency. And bless you. And I'm going to say in the beginning stages of things, yes, you make more money as a dual agent, but in the market we're in right now, if you list a property, it's probably going to be better if somebody else is the buyer's agent, or at least maybe dual agency, but in your same firm. But you being caught in the middle of an early transaction to where you're trying to represent both parties, I don't even like it. after 25 years. You know, it puts you in a position to where it's a little bit uncomfortable, and especially right now with multiple offers coming in, and your buyer is the one that wins the offer and four other people don't win the offer. I may be the most honest person in the world, but there's going to be somebody that thinks I gave insider information, correct? So y'all get where I'm going with that. I like having two agents involved. Sunny, the only thing she does is seller agency. She owns a company too. I mean, she does some other stuff with that, but she doesn't represent buyers at all. That's the way she's chosen to go down her path of the business, at least at this stage in her career. She could always change. Where I do both buyers and sellers. So I'm comfortable with both. Either way works fine with me. But just to give you a little bit of background about myself, and I won't bore you to death with everything, but here's what I mean when I say that I feel like I can reach every one of you. When I got into the business, I was coaching baseball at Pine Forest High School, and I was teaching school at Pine Forest High School. I was a math teacher there. So for the first 7 years, all I did was teach school and coach baseball. And I say all I did because y'all know how baseball on a high school level, varsity, I was the varsity coach for 3 years, JV for 4. 7:30 night games at Southview, when we're at Pine Forest, they got over at 10:30. There's Jalissa. Hi, Jalissa. We ended up leaving Southview at 11 o'clock on the bus, getting home, and parents weren't actually in the parking lot to pick up the children. So it may be 12 o'clock, and then I'm rolling home at 12:30, and then I'm back at the school the next morning at 6:30, 7 o'clock. So I was working, and my father-in-law said, you know, Scott, you can talk to people. You have no problems with that. And you're pretty good at taking tests. So why don't you go get your real estate license? Because he was a broker in charge for what was at the time John Koning Realtors. Some of you have been around. Prudential John Koning was big, big, big. They had offices across the town, and he was one of their brokers in charge. And he said, why don't you go get your license and just be a referral agent? I can stand in front of you and look you in the eye and say, I never intended to sell a house. Literally, when I got my license, it was to be a referral agent, because he told me, look, if you tell one person to go buy a house, and he used, for example, Fran Braden. Fran has now passed, great agent. She used to have 40 or 50 listings at any time when the peak was going on. And he said, you tell Fran to talk to John and Sally. So you meet somebody, you go tell them, hey, John, why don't you go talk to Fran? Fran's an excellent agent. I bet she's got a house you'd be interested in. They buy a $100,000 house. Now, back in those days, dual agency was big because there was no internet. There was a MLS book. We literally had like the Sears catalog. I don't even know if Jalissa was around with the Sears catalog or not there, but it was the Sears catalog of houses. Every 2 weeks, you got your MLS book, and you loved getting your MLS book, but you sold your own listings. People came to you and said, hey, I want to buy a house. You go, okay, here's mine. Because there was no internet. There was no Zillow for them to use. And so you showed your listings first. So he said, $100,000 house, because back in those days, this was in the 90s. That was a very nice house. $100,000 house. She has both sides of the transaction. That's $6,000. She'll give you 25%. Well, being a math teacher, it didn't take me long to figure out that was $1,500. I was making $1,080 a year coaching baseball. Let that sink in for a minute. I could tell one person to go buy a house and not do anything else and make it. I go, even if I don't do anything, that doesn't sound like I mean, okay, sure. Because back then, and y'all are going to hate this, back then the class was 3 hours a night, 2 nights a week for 6 weeks. That's all I had. No post licensing, no state test, national test. I just went and sat and took my little Scantron and circled in the answers. I literally, and I'm telling you, I literally did not think I would sell houses. I thought I was going to be a referral. You can't get paid unless you have a license. That's what my father-in-law kept telling me. He's like, I'm not going to break the rules and do these bird dogging fees. And Jalissa knows Jerry. Well, you know Jerry, Heather. He was a stickler. Command Sergeant Major, retired. Y'all think I can be some OCD. Some of y'all were here early and heard that. But you never know where it's going to go. I mean, you literally never know. Got my license in February of 96. I didn't do anything until May. And then in May, guess what was over? Baseball season was over. So I go, Jerry, you think you got a little time to talk to me about this, about real estate, what all it involves? And so after school, I started, instead of coaching baseball, I started going to see him. And we started doing a little training. Well, guess what? Over the summer, I sold my first house and listed my first house. And by the end of the year, I had sold 5 houses and I made $8,000. I was not tearing the world up. I mean, we're talking May to the end of the year. It was 5 houses, $8,000, but it was a lot more than I was making coaching baseball. And I liked it. I got the bug. It's kind of like other things. When you get the bug, you get the bug. I mean, you want to do it. You want to be good at it. You want to, I want more. I want more. I can do more. And so the next year I was still teaching full time. Any of you got a full-time job? Any of you on Zoom, if you have a full-time job, you can do it. It went from 5 houses to 11 houses. Then it went to 17 houses. And I was still teaching full time. Then it got a little too much. Because you got to understand, we're still talking about late 90s. And where's my cell phone? We didn't have smartphones. I was cool though. I could go out to my car, leave the school, get in my car and break out the bag phone. And I could hold my bag phone up and I thought I was the man. But it's one of those things that it was hard. You're teaching all day, whatever your job may be that's working you, it's hard. You were working nights and weekends. And the one saving grace at that point was that I did not have any kids. Because now when you start throwing the whole family dynamic into it, my wife understood because guess what her father did? So she was like, oh, I know what real estate is. He's going to be gone on nights and weekends. And then when he's off and we'll be able to do stuff. But she understood the family dynamic because her father-in-law had been in it for a while. I mean, my father-in-law had been in it for a while. But it's tough. So any of you that have full-time, like if you have a full-time job, you go, Scott, I don't know how I'm balancing this now. Can you please talk to me about that sometime? I mean it. I mean that sincerely to every single one of you, whatever position that you may be in. Hopefully I can be of some help if you need it. Not telling you just X's and O's like we're going to do today, but how would you structure this? How did you work this? You know, because it is going to be one of those things that this business can all consume. It is exciting and it does get you pumped up and you want to do more, but at some point you have to say, whoa, there are certain things in life that are needing attention as well. So I ended up going to part-time. My principal let me go part-time teaching, which was fantastic. So I cut back to 7:30 to 11:30. I walked out the doors of Pine Forest by 11:30. No more coaching, no more hall duties, no more faculty meetings, no, come teach class and then go, which was outstanding. So at that point, it went up to 24 houses and 26 houses. And it was a very good business. I'll say it this way, having the part-time job and even with the full-time, any of you are going to have a part-time, you're going to have something that supplements this, you're going to be working. And on Zoom, you may be listening and you can raise a hand too. But I will say it this way, the year I sold 26 houses, it was 13 of them were directly related to Pine Forest High School because I was around them. They saw me, they knew me. Most of them liked me and they trusted me. They knew what I did as a school teacher. They knew how I ran my classroom. And they said, I bet Scott does a good job selling houses too. And if I was not in front of those people, in fact, I still get in front of those people. Every golf tournament, guess who has a sign out there on the thing? Every football game, if you go to Pine Forest, guess what you're going to see on the side of the fence down there at the football game? I do it to support the program, but I also do it out of respect because they supported me and getting my business established. Good morning. Good having you with us. Getting my business established. Okay. Now we're going to go through the rest of it pretty quickly. I ended up getting out of that and Caldwell Banker decided they wanted me to be in charge of recruiting and training and be one of their assistant managers. And so I did. And it was fantastic until they said, oh, wait, we need you to now be broker in charge. And while my father-in-law was a very good command sergeant major, lead the troops, tell who to do, what to do, when to do, how to do, I can't listen to problems all day. I can't hear people call in and complain that your agent did this and your agent did that and your agent didn't do this and this happened and oh, we're going to sue you. And yeah, no, I'm not made for that. I've always said when I was teaching, I want to teach kids. I don't want to be a principal. I just want to teach kids. And when I got into real estate, I should have just said, all I want to do is sell houses because I'm pretty dang good at selling houses. But how much toilet paper do I need to order? Who needs to be hired? Who needs to be fired? You can't fire them because they make too much company dollar, blah, blah. No, do your job. Old Belichick, do your job well. And then I'll be okay. But if you don't, I'm not going to be happy with you. And I'm going to not be happy with the environment that I'm in. So that's where we are. I'm now back into selling. So if you ever had aspirations do any of you have aspirations to like be a broker in charge? Because look, I'm here. I've been there, done that. I don't want to do it anymore, but I could certainly tell you some of the pros and cons of it. Jalissa now is a broker in charge, correct? Sonny is a broker in charge. And that's why I like having other folks here because it's a different perspective. I mean, it may even be the difference, and I don't mean this bad, a female perspective versus a male perspective. It may be completely different. So having the resources, we are here to help. I know Jalissa is absolutely the same. We'll put her information up here. Wasn't sure if you were going to make it for sure, but we'll put her information up here too, so that if you need to reach out and things like that, we're here to help. I'll say it that way. This association is very giving. And so what we're going to do is to transition over into now, what is the first piece of help that I can give you? And if you've got your packet here, and for the ones that on Zoom, hopefully you went ahead and printed out the packet of information, but this is the buyer sample packet. And when I say this, I mean this literally. This is what I go over every single time whenever I'm getting ready to make an offer. So if I have a buyer that says, Scott, I love this house, I'm going to have one of these packets for them. Now, am I going to have a packet for every single property I show? No. Because there's no way to put a packet together for every single property every single time. I would not have enough time to do that. However, I will give you some kind of a helpful hint for how I do use this with buyers when we get to the end of the first break here. And I will be very clear. I try to break every 50 minutes because everybody needs a break to either answer their phone, use the bathroom, go talk, just stretch your legs, whatever. 50 minutes is about as long as the human brain should go without having some form of a break. And so by then we want to be through the buyer packet. And what is the buyer packet for an offer? This is what I want to have before a buyer makes an offer. I want them to be able to review it, and I want me to be able to review it. So first thing we're going to do is just to go through what everything is. Second thing is going to be Kayla is going to be our demonstrator, and she's going to show you how to find it. Everything can be found through Enovia. I'm sorry, Matrix. Enovia is old. It's not as old as the books, but it's old. Matrix. And then from there, we're going to transition into how would we use this? And then at the break, if you guys say, Scott, can you please show me how we went to the plat again? We'll pick a whole nother property. Here's the fun thing about it. Pick a property. Go on MLS and pick something and practice putting one of these packets together. Make some notes on there. How do I get to it? But I'm going to say it this way. When you log into Matrix, you do not have to log out of Matrix to get everything that I've got right here. That's the good thing about part of Realtor membership is you get some of the benefits like that everything is right there at your grasp. You got to know where to go, but it's at your grasp. Number one, if you've been out showing houses before, you've seen a cut sheet. You will want to have in your packet the seller cut sheet. Okay, the agent cut sheet. This does not go out to other individuals. Instead, what you're going to have is the agent customer display. So your customers are going to want to have a customer display that they can review. What's important about this form? Well, it's got things like, are there HOA dues out there? Are they leaving the refrigerator or not leaving the refrigerator? Because me as a buyer's agent, I'm not going to know that unless I learn it from the seller, which I am not supposed to be talking to, or from the listing agent, from this MLS cut sheet. They're also going to want to know things like, is this on a well or not? Now, understand the information is deemed reliable, but not guaranteed. In fact, it probably says that right there. So somebody could say, oh, yeah, they're hooked up to the sewer. But then when you do your research, it's on a septic tank. If somebody says, I don't want a septic tank, I don't want a well, I want to live in Long Hill Elementary School District. I want to live in Van Story School District. I don't want to be in the city limits. Those are all things that you can research for them. And according to the Real Estate Commission, those become material facts because it's of special importance to the person. And so at that point in time, we will want to do our research about that to make sure we're finding properties that fit. So if I've got somebody that says, I absolutely want to be in this school district, I will pull up listings for them. But before we ever go look at that house, that will be one check I'll do is it in the school district they want it to be in? Now, that's not something that's in your packet, but that's also something. If y'all jot down some notes, when I get on a roll, if there's something I say, jot down a note and say, how do you get to that? Because guess what? You can get to that through Matrix as well. So if you have questions about how to do that. All right, next. This has to come from the listing agent, but it's the property disclosure statement. Residential property disclosure statement, RPODs, as they love to refer to it at the Real Estate Commission. And then, of course, we've got mineral, oil, and gas rights disclosure, the MOG. And then, of course, we have got lead-based paint if the house was built prior to 1978. Now, I pulled one of Sunny's properties because, of course, we tag team, and I always pulled one of hers last week. And so this one did not qualify because lead-based paint is what? Pre-78. So this house was not built pre-78, so we didn't have to worry about it. All right, next is going to be the real list. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you have seen the real list before? Okay, good. If you haven't seen this before, this is kind of taking everything and putting it in one specific location. So if you can imagine the tax office and the register of deeds office kind of coming together, and then even some of the plat, it's not as good, but they do some of the drawing of the lot on the back page, but it's bringing that information together, even bringing together some things from MLS, maybe from a previous MLS listing, that the tax office says it's 1,200 square feet. The MLS says that it was 1,217 square feet. It'll tell you both of those so that you understand, okay, was that something that was from the tax office from when it was originally built? Or was that from the agent who may have measured it themselves or had an appraisal done and got the square footage? Okay, so that is the next 3 pages. And then we've got the North Carolina General Warranty Deed. This is going to be where ownership was taken. And we'll talk about what the importance of having this document is. This is really not that important for your buyer. I guess it is in some ways because you want to read it and make sure there's no restrictions. Like you'll be very surprised. A lot of areas have restrictive covenants, but there are some areas that don't have restrictive covenants, but they have what are called deed restrictions. There's a neighborhood out on the north side of town. I live out there, so that's why I keep referencing north side. I'm just a north side boy. I mean, Pine Forest. Would you expect any different? And so out in Linden, there is a neighborhood out there by what was the old Circle J Rodeo. And I can't remember the name of it. Windsor Farms, I believe is the name. It's Windsor something. I believe it's Windsor Farms. And they have deed restrictions that are enclosed in the deed. Like you buy a 12-acre lot, it says in the deed you cannot subdivide. It says there is an easement for a horse trail behind every single person's property because it's an equestrian type community. I mean, you're out on acreage. People want to ride their horses. They got a nice little trail around the outside of the property. So everybody has to have area in the back of their property that allows horses to do that. Those are kind of things that are on the deed. You very rarely see those kind of things, but it's important to have the deed. And there's more importance of having the deed that we'll get to when we get to the contract. All right, so now we've got the plat. A little bit better than that little realist drawing that we just had a second ago. And for you guys like me that have to have some extra eyeballs, which by the way, I just found I got to get progressive lenses now. My readers are not going to work any longer. Age has caught up to me. So now I'm going to be getting me some glasses. They won't be as cute as Heather's, but that's okay. I've got a map here of blown up version. Now, there is a way I'm sure that I could do this without actually taking a picture of it with my camera on my phone. I don't waste time on the small stuff. If I can take a picture of it with my camera and print it out on a piece of paper, I'm okay with that. But y'all may find a way to actually blow it up, because you can blow it up, and Kayla will show you how to blow it up. And then every time I go to print, it doesn't want to print it. It wants to print it this old way. So when I blow it up, I take a picture of it with my phone. So if you're wondering why that looks kind of weird there, it doesn't look as nice as the rest of them. Next is going to be the restrictive covenants. Now, understand, not every property is going to have restrictive covenants. Not every property is going to have a plat. Think about if you're selling those 12 acres out in Windsor Farms. There may not be a plat. It may be a meets and bounds description, starting at a stake, going blah, 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 degrees, minutes, seconds from this, whatever. So it may be that you can't pull everything for this packet every single time, but everything that you can, try to get, because every one of it has a little bit of importance. And I'll talk to you about the importance a little bit more as we go through. I didn't print the entire restrictive covenants. I did print just the one page. And then last but not least, this is a form that I actually did a little, I don't know what we call them, the 2-minute update. Facebook has, if y'all are not part of the Facebook group for the Realtor Association, talk with Kayla at the break, because she can hook you up on that. We're doing like 2-minute topics, 2-minute Tuesday. I don't know what the heck it's called. They just say, hey, would you teach something and make it short? And this is what I taught on, the 1004 MC. Way back in the day, there was no 1004. Even before Matrix, when we had Anovia that I mentioned earlier, there was no 1004 MC. What this does is this takes and gives me dollar per foot. This gives me days on the market. This gives me list price to sell price ratio to see if people are getting full price or above full price. This takes all of the stuff that me as an old math geek, math nerd, loved and did by hand. I literally would do this by hand. I would look at a neighborhood, I would calculate, I'd add all the days on the market up, I'd divide by how many houses I had to find out the average days on the market for the neighborhood. Thank you, Matrix. I haven't got to do all that stuff anymore. It is fantastic. This is really, really fantastic as well, as far as that list price to sell price ratio. When you go out there and you see 107%, 103%, 103, 103, 100, 100, you do have that one that was at 94.8. I'm gonna say that probably was an appraisal that came in low. They were listed at a certain price and it didn't appraise and they had to lower it because the seller probably would not have dropped it. Let me put my eyeballs on. The seller probably would not have dropped it $12,000 in 6 days. I don't know many sellers that are on market 6 days and go, oh, no, give me that one. I want that one. So you can take this information, and when you have a buyer that says, you know, I heard it's been competitive, but I mean, are people really offering more than full price? In the neighborhood you like, if you want a chance of getting accepted? Yeah, you might better offer now it's not you're convincing them, you're talking them into, no, you've got empirical data here that says, if you want a $235,000 house, you may have to pay, or $227,900, you may have to pay $235 for it. Or if you want a $215,000 house, you may have to pay $222 for it. Because the market is showing that. This shows the market of what's going on in a neighborhood. If it's not in a neighborhood, if you are in that 5 acres out in Rayford, then you can actually do what's called a circle search so that you can say, I want everything within a 2-mile radius of this property, and I'm gonna throw it onto a 1004 MC. Outstanding. I love that form, and we're gonna show you how to get to that form. So here's the buyer packet, all right? Have it, learn how to put it together, practice. I'm gonna tell you this, we should be able to do it in less than 10 minutes. We're gonna say just because we're on the computer and in person here, we're gonna give us 12 minutes. So by 20 till, we should be through you finding everything that's on this packet. Okay, now we're not gonna take questions till the end. And again, if you say, let's do this again, we'll do it again. Not going to pick properties right now necessarily for Harnett County and Hoke County, but you can do the same thing for Harnett and Hoke County. I don't want to get too, it's kind of like anything else. You want to learn how to do something and do it well before you start expanding. So if your market is mainly, let's say you're from Lumberton and your market is mainly in the Robeson County, then you focus on Robeson County. Okay. If your market is mainly Sanford, get Lee County, focus on Lee County. You can do the same things, but just learn their sites because most of the sites are the same, but some are a little different. Okay. So Kayla, if you're logged in, are we where you have a screen and folks on Zoom, everything good? All right. So we are going to log into Matrix. And if you do not have your login, once you're a full member of the board, everybody should be able to log in. Okay. If anybody has not logged into Matrix, anybody here not? Anybody on Zoom not? Okay, perfect. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a search. Your client calls you up and says, man, I love this house on Boston. I'm considering making an offer on it. Can we go look at it? Because I really like it. Okay. And normally this would be, can we look at it again? So I don't know if it's active or pending right now. So Kayla, go ahead and click pending. Normally you'd be doing an active search and let's go in with, and let's go active as well, just in case. Let's go 1412 because you should be able to do it just by that. And then let's do the results. Perfect. There's Boston. It is pending. I figured 4 days on the market. Go Sunny. All right. So we're going to do, click it on the MLS link. We're going to mark the box in the top left corner. Okay. Because we want to mark. That's the one we want. And now we're going to come down to print. And we're going to go to an agent full. Hit print. And we're not going to actually print, but there you go. That's sheet one. All right. Now cancel that out. We're going to go to client full because you want your clients to have a sheet. We're going to go to print. And we're done. All right. Next thing is the property disclosure. So we're going to go back to the results. We're going to go back to the property and we're going to do the little transaction desk right there. All right. Under transaction desk, there's my residential property association disclosure. So the little green or the little 3 dots on the side. Yep. There you go. We're going to print that one. It's going to take you longer to print it than it is to get to it, isn't it? And then we're going to go to the property disclosure and we're going to print that one. All right. Lead-based paint should be there as well. If those are not there, please go ahead and reach out to the listing agent asking them, do you have copies of it? So if you have a listing and your gal says they want to make an offer and there's not a property disclosure, lead-based paint, mineral oil and gas that you need, please reach out to them. Okay. Some people do that intentionally. Jalissa, would you agree that they do it intentionally so that they have to know an offer's coming? Yeah. They have it ready, but they don't put it in the transaction desk. Not sure why, but anyway. All right, let's go X that out for me, please, Kayla. And now what we're going to go to is the real list. So across the top bar is real list. There you go. And we're going to type in 1412 Boston, which we've already done. Remember, we practiced it. We got a little help there. So we're going to search it. All right. And it's going to take us to it. And then down here, isn't it weird? Everybody puts print somewhere different. I mean, it's just all over the place. So print, and you'd have to download it. So now we're going to pick that back up, and there you go. Top right-hand corner now you can print. So print button in the left corner takes you to, makes you print it on the right corner. All right, so we're going to leave this one open for a second, though. Kayla, can you scroll up for me? Just take that page up all the way to where we get the picture of the land. There you go. All right, so we got the plot here. All right, come back down just above this. Come back the other way, sorry. Up, 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 up. There you go, right there. All right, this is the last time that it's sold and changed hands. So the next thing we're going to want to get to is the deed. This is the easiest place because now you know exactly where it is. They told you where it is. All right, so you don't have to go searching. You don't have to search somebody's name. You're able to just pull that page right there, 8814-468. All right, so Kayla, let's go back to matrix because everything is through matrix. Just keep telling yourself, just go to matrix, just go to matrix. This time across the top, you don't see a tab because there are multiple counties. This is a Cumberland County deed, right? But we're not going to have a Cumberland County tab and a Hope County tab and a Harnett County tab and a Hope Lee County tab and all that. So let's go to the links. And let's go to the Cumberland County Register of Deeds. All right, now here's where you get to play this every time. This is hard to find sometimes too. If it's anybody not been here before, you have not been here before. All right, search records, make yourself a little note, search records, green tab. All right. Acknowledge disclaimer. You got to acknowledge this disclaimer every single time. Kayla, go back one more second. And I apologize. I know Angie and I forgot your name. Tony. Tony, acknowledge disclaimer. You got the green bar. All right. So we're going to acknowledge disclaimer right above Lee Warren's name. So if you make a note, say above Lee Warren's name, just look for Lee. You'll probably see the hyperlink and you'll get used to it. All right, so acknowledge disclaimer. Now, full system means you don't know where you're going. Imaging system means that you know where you're going. You know what you want. So we're going to go to imaging system. Deed book we've got. Now, if it goes above 10,000, notice there's a different toggle that you've got to use for above 10,000. This one was not. It was 8814. So we're going to just go book 8814 and page, which we can go back to the real list, or I can just flip in this real list and it's 80. Holy cow, that's bad. 468. All right, now view page. There it is, the deed. Now let's roll up on the deed for a second. Right here is our legal description. Plat 116, page 100. So let's go to the deed. And by the way, print was right over here in the corner. Let's go to the, where it says deed. Let's pull that down. Now we want a plat. And let's erase that. And the good part is now I can just keep this open, 116, 100. Okay, and view page. And there's my plat. I want lot number 13 on my plat. So we zoom in and we keep zooming until we get to lot 13. And we're going to keep that open for a second, but I'm on the clock. I've only got 3 more minutes to go and I may fail. I don't want to fail. I promised y'all something. Let's go back and let's go to the Register of Deeds one more time. This time I don't know where I'm going. So I'm going to search the records. I'm going to acknowledge the disclaimer. And this time I'm going to do a full system. I'm going to go non-human because I'm going to try to find restrictive covenants. The name of the subdivision is Woodchase. So Woodchase. And then I'm going to do search. I want the covenants, COV for section 3. So I'm going to hit that blue hyperlink. And I'm going to get the image. And there's the restrictive covenants. Again, not every one of them is going to have restrictive covenants, but you're going to have to search it by the neighborhood name. And it is going to be a non-human because we're talking about a subdivision now. You could get the plat that way also if you wanted to. I just like it the other way. I think the other way is easier because I've already got the booking page. I know exactly where to go to. I live in Hunter's Ridge. Sometimes things may be recorded as Hunter Ridge, right? And whatever's recorded is how it's going to pop up here if you do a search by a name. So I'd much rather have book and page because guess who did that previous research? The attorney's office. I'm hoping the attorney's office spent some time with it and did it pretty accurately since that's the ownership document for the property. All right, last but not least, Kayla, if we can close that out, that's got our restrictive covenants. We need our 1004 MC. So we're going to go back to matrix and we're going to go search. And this time, rather than searching a property, we're going to be searching what's sold in a neighborhood. So residential, we're going to change active to sold. and we're going to type in Woodchase. Last time we went to the specific number of the property, right? This time we're going to the neighborhood name. Woodchase, there are 10 results. We are going to click on the results and we're going to highlight all 10 of them. We're going to print a 1004 MC right there. If you've never seen it before, worth its weight in gold. Print to a PDF. Ta-da. All right. Has it been worth coming and getting up early this morning? Good. It's worth the price of admission since it was free. Questions? All right. Do we need to focus in after the break on anything? Because me and Kayla will work while y'all are taking a quick break here. We're still not ready to break yet, but anybody got anything you say, look, can you do that one more time? We'll make notes of it. It was that good, Kayla? All right. All joking aside, let's go back to that plat for just a minute. When you start looking at your plats, and let's pull that over if we can, Kayla, just pull it to where we get back to number 13. Oh, there's 13. Yeah. And let's pull it to the side, kind of center it if you don't mind. All right. So when you're looking at a plat like this, there are certain things of why you want this. And that's what I'm transitioning into now. Why do we want each one of these documents? Well, if I'm buying lot number 13, there's nothing to see here. Little bit of the road right here that is a no access easement, which means pretty much that the state maintains that property or the city so that they can do road work and things like that. So you're going to cut the grass, but they're going to be able to get access to it if they need it. Whole different story if you're representing the buyer on lot number 9. What if your buyer for lot number 9 says they want to put in an in-ground pool? Do they ever have plans in the future of putting an in-ground pool? Because that's a utility easement running straight through that backyard. Huh. I'd certainly rather them know that before they buy that house from me than after they start trying to get permits to put in an in-ground pool and somebody goes, you can't put a pool here. You can go above ground. But y'all understand what that drainage easement is. Yes, permitting is a little bit different than it used to be. Oh, and by the way, they want to put that nice, beautiful brick wall fence around lot number 10. I don't know that I would put a brick wall fence down that line and all the way to there, because guess what? If they ever need to get to this pipe, they got to come through your fence with big, large equipment. I'd rather know that before moving into the neighborhood, before buying that house if I were a buyer. And I think some of you are shaking your head. Yes, you'd rather know that as well than finding out about that after I've already put up my nice brick wall fence with the nice decorative pillars that are there with the wrought iron that, yeah. Not real easy to just take that down, let the trucks go in and do their thing and then put it right back up, is it? So, why? Why do we have each one of these things? Why? Well, here we go. Why do we have the MLS cut sheet? Well, again, there's information on here that the agent has asked the buyers about or the sellers about that we're not going to know. Okay. Here's one. I'm getting ready to list one tomorrow. There's some deferred maintenance. The couple is not interested in doing any kind of repairs against my advice. So in the MLS, I have it disclosed very clearly. It is as is. Sellers will make no repairs, so that when you take your buyer out there, you're going to know that they're not going to be replacing any of that rotten wood that's on the back of the house that's kind of ate through. And I'm just being material fact. I'm just disclosing. I'm not trying to bash the house. It's just when you go out on the back deck and you turn back around to the door, there's a hole right there to where it's rotted out. Okay. When you look at the window sills are rotten. When you look at the windows, it's the old windows that need glazing. Y'all know what I'm talking about with glazing, where there's the pieces of, it's little pieces of glass that are held together by kind of putty, hard putty. Yeah, it needs that. VA is not going to approve it. FHA is not going to approve it. I need to tell you that before you go out there and go, oh, well, maybe the seller will fix it. Yeah, let's put an offer because it's going to look good. It's 2,100 square feet for 160 in Hillendale on the north side of town. It's going to look very attractive to buyers online, but I put that in remarks number 1. Sellers will make no repairs as is. MLS cut sheet is so you'll know what's going on that you may not otherwise know about conversations. HOA fees, we talked about that earlier. Okay. Kaylee, got a question from Zoom? Yes, we'll do that. Start the break. We'll just make a note. Can you ask them if they want that map or a different map? Because I think it'd be better to go for a different one. We can go look at my house. I have wetlands in my backyard. So that's something extra we haven't seen. All right. RPODs, why do we want this? Well, not only is the, yes. Oh, you're good. Because that property is located in section 3.
And they want to do this.
The covenants again, or the plat? Awesome. Plats are fun. I scared everybody now. Everybody's going to be wanting to look at plat. Oh my God, I can't find a plat. Here's the fun thing about it is y'all get to do it online in less than 10 minutes. I used to have to drive down to the courthouse. All right. Property disclosure. You know why we want this. There are things that the seller may have answered. Now, the seller may say no representation, but we want this for our client because they may have said, how old is the roof? How old is the heating and air system? Are you connected to a city county? Do you know how many how many bedrooms are on your permit for your septic tank? We want that information if the seller is willing to share it. Not all sellers are willing to share it, and that's okay. You've heard buyers are liars. Okay, sellers can be liars too. So anything we can verify for ourselves, we're going to verify. But it's kind of nice to get the seller's information if they will share it with us, especially things like the HOA, because on our MLS, it only says HOA $175 a year. But it would be nice to kind of have somebody from the HOA say, what's covered? What am I getting for my 175 or 200 a month if you're out in Anderson Creek? Because I have no idea what you're going to get at Anderson Creek Club, but for 200 bucks a month, you're probably getting a pretty good bit of stuff out there inside the gated community. Mineral oil and gas rights. I have that here mainly because that's just, it's required by the state, but I think this is the silliest form we've got. Anyway, real list. I pulled the real list really for nothing more than things like the tax information. My people are going to be wanting to make an offer on this home, right? I want them to be able to call their lender and try to get an approximate payment. If I'm listed at 200 and what is this one listed at? 235, 225, 225. And my people say, I want to make an offer at 235. Wouldn't you like, if you were a buyer, wouldn't you like to know what your approximate payment is going to be if I offer 235? Well, to get an accurate approximate payment, you actually need the tax information because you're probably going to have an escrow account, especially if it's a VA buyer, FHA buyer. Conventional buyer putting 20% down, cash buyer, no, you're not going to have to worry. If I was a cash buyer though, wouldn't I love to know how much the taxes are going to be so I could go ahead and try to save up for it for next year? There you go. Realist has it for me right there. The last 3 years of what was the tax bill for each one of those years. Doesn't mean what the house is worth, but it tells me how much it was. Now, as far as history, the history helped us to get to the documents we wanted for the deed and things like that. But it also gives me a little bit of background perspective. When you go down to that deed that we talked about, that 8814, it shows me that these people bought it back in 2012 for $174,500. It also shows me under the mortgage history that they refinanced in 2020 for $144,000. They did a conventional loan refinance. That helps me kind of get a little bit of perspective, not necessarily that they're going to accept a low offer, but do I have to worry about them being upside down at that point? They shouldn't, right? They shouldn't be unless they've opened a deed of trust up in the last little bit that hasn't hit this form. They owe $144,000 on it. Should they have money to be able to do some repairs? Does it mean they're going to? But should they have some money to? Absolutely. Next page, we talked about the importance of this. The deed. The deed gives us all of the record information. This is the document when we get ready to make a contract. Are you going to trust the attorney's paralegal that did the research, or are you going to trust Scott Harden, the listing agent? Please say Scott. No, I'm just kidding. The paralegal, right? We would hope if there is one document in this whole packet that is accurate, we don't have to say information deemed reliable, but not, we hope this is the most guaranteed, honest to God information, right? So I want to have this as I'm filling in my contract, and we'll do that in the next phase. Restrictive covenants. I got a pit bull. Oh, well, there's some neighborhoods that don't let you have, I don't really. I'm the bad guy. I don't let pets at my house. But it is one of those things that if you had a pit bull, you'd kind of want to know if there were restrictions against pit bulls. I've always wanted a picket fence in my front yard, a little white cute picket fence in the front yard. Well, you might want to know restrictive covenants to know if you can put any fencing in the front yard. I'm backing up to a golf course, but I don't want to see the golf course all the time. I'm going to put up a privacy fence. Right? You need to know what restrictions apply at each one of the different neighborhoods. Now, again, there are not always restrictive covenants. There are not always going to be things that I'm selling a house right now at 401 Cape Fear Avenue. It's old Haymount. It's I don't even remember, 1918 when the house was built. Cool house, beautiful house, but it's still before they started doing restrictive covenants. I tried to pull restrictive covenants for my buyer. And then I also immediately told the attorney's office, once we got under contract, can you please research it as well? I was not able to find with my limited resources any restrictive covenants, but would you do a full search when you do the title search for my clients? Absolutely, no problem. That was the response I got. They looked it up. They said they could not find any either. Doesn't mean they're not out there, but now I feel like I did my due diligence as well as having somebody more qualified than me, a title searcher, do their due diligence. Last but not least, if I have to explain to you why this 1004 MC, you're not a math person. Okay. Because I love it. Can you tell I beam about talking about that form anyway. So we got a plat we want to look up again. We're going to go to my house during the break on the plat. Anything else from that packet? Or I know it's going to look easy when I do it. Please understand, it better. If it looks hard when I do it, that's not good. But any questions about that? Can you see the importance of it? And Zoom, I'll ask you, I appreciate having people here. I'm so used to looking at people. My Zoom audience as well. Hopefully you can appreciate the need for each of these documents. There is a reason for it, for this exercise. And then once you have those documents, how to utilize them. Now, I'm going to give you one more utilization before we transfer over into the actual boring stuff of doing contract filling in the blank. But any questions? Anything else you want us to have ready for us to hit the ground running? Yes.
Question.
Uh-huh.
So basically for your buyer, you're going to print out the this one, the MC.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're doing a CMA, that's usually just for the seller, or can you do for the buyer as well, just kind of for education?
Good question. So people on Zoom that may not have heard the question, it was when I pull out a 10 or pull up a 1004 MC, am I doing it along with a CMA, and am I doing a CMA for the buyer in addition to a seller? If the buyer asks me for a CMA, I definitely do. I'm going to say that running the numbers, I do a rough CMA based on these numbers from the 1004 MC for a buyer. As far as doing a full, what I would say a full, it honestly takes me 2 to 3 hours worth of a CMA. No, I really don't. Not unless my buyer asks me to do that. And in the market we're in right now, the time is really more the constraint. I would spend more time with it. There's a lot of activities that are different because of the speed of transactions right now, to where, normally, it would absolutely be, let's get together at the office and let's talk about the offer for a couple hours. This is a big decision. Even if we have to do it after hours, even if we have to do it on a Saturday, let's get together. I don't do it on Sunday, but with the speed that we're moving at right now, can't really do that. But yeah, at that point, if I've got more time to work with, like we go out and take a second look at the property. We're not even getting second looks at it anymore. But used to, I would take a buyer out for a second look because you see things the second time around that you didn't see the first time. And then once that second look happened, then let's set up a time to where we can sit down for about 2 hours, block 2 hours out of your schedule. I block 2 hours out of my schedule. At that point, it's probably a predetermined set time that I could do a little bit deeper dive. So I'm going to say that that's market driven, that no, right now I don't do a full CMA. I take the information that's there. I will make adjustments for things that I see immediately, like if there's a swimming pool, if there's a double garage versus single garage, that I can calculate pretty quickly in my head. The key thing that I'm hoping is that pretty much all of those homes in that neighborhood were built around the same time. All of them are kind of the same features. And so then it really becomes more of I've got the location, I've got the size. Most of them have the same features because the builder put in a standard package. Now all I'm really doing is making slightly adjustments for condition. And that's all that should really influence my price. If y'all never been to one of my classes before, that's my big five: location, size, features, condition, price. I'm going to say it this way: foreclosures, they don't care where it is, how big it is, what it looks like, what features it has. They'll just drop the price until it sells. That's one strategy for selling houses. We would rather take homes in the location that are about the same size. If your features are better and your condition is better, your price is going to be better. If your features are less or your condition is less, your price is going to be less. I love this, but it's not rocket science. I love this business, but it's a pretty simple business. And if you don't want to fix the condition and features, like my guys I mentioned to you earlier, guess what we're going to do? We're going to drop the price. Yes.
So if you cannot find any restrictive covenants on the county records and deeds, it does not mean necessarily that there are no restrictive covenants, correct?
Correct. That is correct. All right. I've overwhelmed you with enough for right now. We're going to take about a 10-minute break. Let's see what time on that clock hopefully is right. Yeah, we'll go 9:55. We'll be back at 10:05. We'll start with a new plat. We'll show how to get to it again. I won't just have it opened up already, but we'll show how to get to it again. If you want anything else, please see me during the break so we don't spend a ton of time. And then I'm going to give you one more little tidbit on this before we transition over into the next step. But y'all go take a break. right, we're ready to bring everybody live. Are they, I turned my mic on, I think. Sorry. Can you hear me through the mic? Okay, good, loud and clear. All right, good. And they're live anyway, right? You guys on Zoom good? All right, good deal. All right, so we're going to start with the question that I was asked before. It was to go through that plat one more time. So we're going to go to Matrix. And we're going to do the link again for Cumberland County. One more up. There you go, Register of Deeds. Remember the little search tab in the green bar. And then acknowledge right above Lee's name. And then in this case, we're going to do a full system. All right, so this may be a little different. Let me let's don't use my property. Let's go back over into Matrix one more time. And let's do a search. So let's say there's an active property that you're looking for, and let's just change it to pending for me, and I'll pull up one that I've got pending. Let's go with 513. All right, so 6 property. All right, so you're wanting to get a plat for my listing on Edinburgh that's under contract right now. So you'll go there and then come down for me. A lot of times the agents will do this for you. Now, we found it on RealList. That RealList had for us the deed booking page and the plat booking page, but sometimes you'll be able to find it from right there as well. So 3961 is what we're looking for. So let's go now to there you go. And we're going to, let's see, we're going to X that one out. Why is it? Yeah, let's X that one. Because, okay, so we're going to search records. If it does it again, I'll show you how to get out of that. Acknowledge disclaimer. Imaging system, sorry. Go back, imaging system, because we know the page now. So we want to go up in the top corner and change that deed to a plat. All right, and it was 39 and 61. And then view page. And that takes us to it. So from MLS, you're going to be able to find the deed booking page, and then from that, you'll be able to find the plat booking page. If the agent doesn't give you the plat booking page, then you're going to rotate your way around through the RealList. So RealList should have it for you if they don't fill that one in for you. Okay. And then, of course, we're looking at this being Jura Drive. Jura Drive leads into right there is Edinburgh. And my lot that I've got is lot number 45 right there. And there is an easement right there. Okay. So on that left side of the property, just a portion of it, and then it juts off that way. It's a drainage easement, I'm sure, of some kind of drain pipe. And that's one of the things you'll start to realize as well. Once you start pulling up to properties, what you're going to notice is, oh, there's a storm drain right there. This house that I'm showing has a storm drain right to the side of it. I bet there's going to be a drainage easement right there. You'll start to key in on putting pieces together. Don't want to overwhelm you right now, but you will start to do that very, very quickly. You'll say, oh, I know what I'm going to see when I look at that plat now that I've seen the property, or vice versa. When you see this plat and then you go out to the home, you already anticipate this is what I'm going to see when I get out to the home to show that home. Now, before we transition over into the second part of our class, which is creating the offer, I do want to do this. Here's what I'll tell you. You can do a better job of locking in clients as a brand new agent than some of the experienced agents do. You don't have to tell them you're brand new. Okay, I would not tell them that you're brand new. Now, some people are going to be referrals that are people that personally know you, and they're going to know that. But if you were to get someone that comes to you, I would not tell them that you are new. If you're able to pull all of this information together, it shows them that you are educated in doing research. Okay, so now when we go to know you, like you, trust you, they may not know you, but hopefully your personality comes out and they like you. And hopefully they trust you because now you're providing them with information. Here's the thing. How many of those experienced agents are going to be so busy when they go out there for that first appointment to meet somebody. When I say go out there, I mean bring them to the office. I always, even me, I bring them to the office for that first appointment before I go out showing them houses. Because if they're not committed to come meet me at the office, I'm not sure that they're committed to really doing this process. I'm not meeting some random stranger. And for you ladies, Derek, you're a big dude. I would still say I wouldn't, if I were you, I wouldn't want to meet somebody at a random place out in the middle of the country somewhere. You know, it's a vacant house. You don't know what's going on. Okay. This is not a safety class, but at the same time, be safe. When they come into the office, how many of them are, well, how many of the experienced agents are going to be too busy that they just meet them at the house? Now, when they meet them at the house, really all they are is just a glorified door opener. Because are they really going to provide with them with any information standing out in the hot sun when it's 97 degrees out on the front porch? Now, they may demonstrate the house, but to me, that's just annoying. I don't want to walk around and go, ooh, ah. Let them look. Let them have their time to look. Let them have their time to talk. So the experienced agent comes out there empty-handed. You ask them to come to the office and you come full guns blazing. And you explain to them what this paperwork is for. It needs to be in your own words. Okay. But this first page will tell you important stuff about the property that I can't know the answer to. Like, for example, is there a homeowners association out here? Is this property actually hooked up to public sewer, or is it on septic tank? Is this property going to leave the refrigerator and the washer and dryer as we walk through? Those are kind of things that this paperwork will answer for you. Then you flip to the next one. This is the disclosure from the actual seller themselves. North Carolina asks the seller to do a disclosure statement. This statement says that the roof was put on in 2008. That's not something I would have known as your representative, but I'll try to find it for you. I'll pull one of these for you. When you find the right house and you get ready to make an offer, what I'm showing you right now in this packet is going to be something that I'll pull up for you as a buyer when you say, Scott, I think I want to make an offer on that house. It may be this one, but it may be a totally completely different. I'm not going to do this for every property, but I'll do this for you when you say I'm serious about it. And then you go through. This is a real list form, and the main objective for the real list form is to help you with what are the taxes going to be on this property. Because when you're estimating a monthly payment with your mortgage person, you're going to want to know how much the taxes are, because that's going to influence how much your payment is each month. I'm not reading every bit of this form to them, but do you see how I'm explaining to them things that are going to be important? When you get to this plat, this is probably the easiest one, right? Because we went back to it again. If the home is in a neighborhood that's platted, I'll pull you the neighborhood plat up, and it's going to show things like, for example, on this lot, there's a drainage pipe going right through the backyard. If you had plans for putting a swimming pool in, this would not be the lot for you. Even if the home is perfect, if you really want an in-ground pool, there's probably not going to be anywhere to put an in-ground pool. That's stuff that I'll pull up for you. That's information. And I know you're going to be interested in kind of how hot is the market in this neighborhood? Is this a good selling neighborhood? Well, yeah, there's been 10 homes that have sold in the neighborhood. The days on the market are all underneath 10 days on the market. This is a neighborhood, and unfortunately, you can look at it over here and see it's a very hot market that people are bidding above full price. 20-year agents in the business are not going to take the time. They're not going to take the time to pull up this packet. They're not going to take the time to educate their clients. Do you follow where I'm going there? You can be brand new in the business. You can show them your expertise. You pull this information up. You talk them through what's important. What are things, because these are things that would be important to you if you were buying the home. I'd want to know if there were any covenants, right? Now all you got to do is be able to put your spin on it. I can't do that for you. If you try to sound like me, it's going to sound fake. I'm just going to say it that way. I have my way of saying it. You've got the tool. Y'all, well, you've known me longer. You've known me. Some of you people that have just met me, Lavondra just met me. We just introduced back there. We spent less than an hour together. We haven't looked at a house, but we've been talking about this information we've been talking about. You didn't know me before you came in. So far, do you like me?
Yeah.
And do you trust me? Do you think I know what I'm doing? That's what I want.
If you don't, you're faking it.
I better by now. That's what you ask yourself is, what can I do to make it where I am the trusted advisor for my client? I don't want to have to meet 10 people at 10 different houses. I want to meet one person at my office and I want to sell them a house. The only reason they don't buy a house is because they don't end up moving in Fayetteville. But I don't want to lose them. And I don't mean that to sound bad, but I don't get paid for how many people I talk to. I get paid for how many people that I convert. And I'm not going to push any house on them, but also I don't really have buyers that jump from me to this other agent. Because on the very first appointment, when I tell you I do this on the very first appointment. And I tell them, I'm not going to do this for every property we look at, but this is the research that I will do for you. When you get excited about a house or you get it narrowed down to the final two, this is information that I'm going to pull up for you and I will try to find it. I'm not perfect by any means, but I'll try to find every bit of this information for you. And if there's anything that I can't find, we'll see if the attorney maybe can find it. Our closing attorney, they'll help us out to find some information. When you get somebody that has contacted you, don't let them jump. Make it to where they want to work with you. They want to continue to work with you. I even tell folks, I don't work on Sundays, and guess what? They still don't leave. But I don't work on Sundays. Period. End of story. I'm not. I got to have time off. I also don't answer my phone after 7 o'clock at night. My phone is on silent, upside down. My mother had to be air vac'd to Greenville Hospital, Greenville, South Carolina. And they called my dad called my wife because he knows I don't have my phone on. You have to unplug, but you can set boundaries for people that this is what my job is. And if you do your job and you do your job well, I'm going to keep going back to that. People want to be with you. People want to work with you, but you got to put in the effort. And to me, this is the first piece that brand new person, y'all are brand new. You can do this. If you get stumped on something and you say, I don't know how to find it, I'm serious. I may not answer immediately, but I'm serious. What? Or after 7, I will not. No. But the next morning, I'll be up at 7. I don't know if you'll be up working at 7. That's what I tell folks is by the time I do 7 to 7, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 5, unless I can sneak away to Bubba's at 3 on Friday. And then Saturday from 10 to 4, yeah, I'm on call. That's more than a 40-hour week. All right, so we're going to get into the actual contract now. Hopefully that helped. Use it. I'm telling you. Yes.
When you put that together and you pull up the plat.
Yes.
the plat in the packet,
Yes.
Would you highlight the actual?
I think it's a good idea. Yeah, if you wanted to, absolutely. So the question for the folks on Zoom would be, would we actually highlight somehow the property so that it would draw more attention to the actual property itself? Yeah, I think that's a great idea. To be honest, I've never thought about it.
Well, I just know,
Yeah.
when I look at it, I went, what?
Yeah, which one is what are we looking at? Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think that's one of those things of I'm so used to, I know what I'm looking for, but that's a great observation. And yeah, I may start to do that, just kind of highlighting it. Good. Any other questions? And it's Tony, right? Okay. All right, good. So we're going to transition into what I say is probably the logistics side of things, getting into the actual offer to purchase. So you guys that are on Zoom, we are transitioning over to, and I think we labeled it in the whatever you call it, the Dropbox. We labeled it as 2T or offer to purchase. Offer to purchase and contract. Now, a little disclaimer for you right now is there is no way that I can do every single offer to purchase and contract. This is the standard 2T that is put together by the North Carolina Association of Realtors, a joint forms along with the Bar Association. So this is considered a joint forms document. There is also an 800T, which is a new construction contract. If you were taking some house and you say, I want to build that house on that lot to a builder. And so at that point in time, I do not have time today to go over the 800T with you. The Real Estate Commission, and again, we've got two bodies you're going to hear me referring to. The Real Estate Commission does not require it to be on a NCAR form. So if the builder has their own contract and the builder says, hey, I build houses all over the nation and here's my contract, you're going to have to use it. Real Estate Commission says that's okay, as long as it has the terms that are necessary to fulfill what a contract needs. And y'all talked about that. And that's why I don't want to teach pre-license or post-license. I don't want to talk about that stuff. I don't want to talk about cap rates. We talked about cap rates one. I don't want to talk about that. But it is one of those things that there are some builders that have their own forms. Can't do that for you. Guess what? When we start having VA foreclosures again, VA foreclosures have their own form. You'll want to get well versed on that. Do I?
They do.
Yeah, they have their own contract, offer to purchase and contract. It's about like the old days, isn't it, Jalissa? It's front and back of one page. Literally, when I got into the business, the offer to purchase was front and back of one page. Now we are up to 15 pages, I believe, on the 2021. Yep, 15 pages on the 2021 version. So, and a bunch of addendums we didn't used to have back in the day. But yeah, VA foreclosures, and I'm going to say it this way, that I'm on the education committee. Jalissa's on the education committee. We feel like education is extremely important. Once the VA foreclosures start to come back out, I do plan on, and I hope you'll second it, I do want to have a class on the VA foreclosure offer to purchase. I would probably not be the most qualified to teach that. It would probably be getting somebody out there that works with VA foreclosures all the time, that they can tell you some of the ins and outs and things like that. But I think that's a good class for folks that are not only brand new to the business, but also that are existing in the business, but may not have done a lot of VA foreclosures. Because if things are the way that they're being portrayed, there will be quite a few folks that end up with, foreclosures because they have been in this moratorium to where they have not been able to receive rent for the entire time. And I'm sure they have not been able to afford 2 house payments or a rent payment and a house payment here if their current tenant was not paying rent for them. So I think it is going to be a market. I think it is going to be something we're going to need to address, and it is going to be something we on the education committee will talk about. And I'm going to use this 2 minutes to put a plug in for the committees. Please join. We need new blood. We need new ideas. We need new thoughts. We need people that are coming in that can give us the perspective of what the newer agents need. I know what's important to me, but I'm an old hat. It's one of those things I can talk about all the time. I want to teach how to do this, or we should talk about how to do that. But I don't mean this to sound bad, but when I go to a class, I pick up about this much, right? Because I've seen a lot in my days and my time. When y'all go to a class, hopefully already you feel like you've got this much. And you're like, this is what I want more of. This is where can we do some more of this type thing? And please join. The association is going to be having open enrollment or whatever you want to call it. They're going to be asking for folks to join committees probably around, Kayla, do you think October? We're getting close, but because we actually end up getting new committees starting in January. And so if you're really big into education, former school teacher, something like I was, come on. If you're big into PR, you like planning events, you like doing that. I do that also, just because I like PR. I want to have good PR for the realtor community. I think we get enough bad publicity. I'd like to get some good publicity of what we're doing out there, helping out with the book bags for Lee Warren down at the Register of Deeds, helping with Toys for Tots. We're going to have a big Toys for Tots push. Tiffany Jones from Caldwell, Tiffany and Edward are heading up the Toys for Tots. Love it. My son got into that. Older son got into the book bags for homeless kids down at the courthouse. So, if it's something that is a, kind of a passion of yours to get out there. I know this year PR was doing the Alms House. They were taking food once a month to the folks that are there, the homeless people that come to eat at the Alms House down in Hope Mills. So again, would love some new ideas and love some new blood, some energy that would be, hey, this is something I want to participate. And you ain't got to do it all. I don't do the Alms House, but I was very instrumental when we were doing book bags. Now we're not doing book bags. I'm very big into the Toys for Tots. So come out and join. Okay, that's a public service message for now. All right, so contract, we're going to start. And what I'm going to do is have this to where you can fill in some blanks. And then we're going to actually put together And this is where it may get a little odd. Y'all are going to tell me what you want to make as an offer. And then I'm going to put on my seller hat. My selling listing agent hat at the end, rather than transitioning. But we're going to put together an offer, pretend like we're putting it together for a seller, not on one of my listings, because I don't want us to be in dual agency. This is one of Sonny's listings. All right. So first thing, contract has the seller's name. Any ideas where we're going to find the seller's name? The deed. Very good. We've got our packet with the deed right there. Who owns it is on the deed. Now, what if that deed says Eric and Sally, but then Sonny listed as Eric and Joanne? First thing I'm going to do is pick up the phone and call the listing agent and say, hey, I just researched the deed and it says that it's Eric and Sally. In MLS, you have it as Eric and Joanne. What's going on? And what's most likely have gone on is Eric and Sally separated, but their divorce decree never filed a quitclaim deed, which is very prevalent because those divorce attorneys will often not file everything that they need to file. So there was never a quitclaim deed put in, or they couldn't do a quitclaim deed because neither one of them could qualify for the house individually to have it only in their name. So they had to keep both names on it because the loan would not allow it to be broken off. One, you follow what I'm saying? One could not afford it without the other. So now Eric and Sally are still on the deed, but Eric got remarried to Joanne. Now, it is also possible that Sally ended up getting remarried, and I have encountered that to where I had to get a husband-wife deed that were now divorced and both spouses. So we had to have all four people sign our listing agreement and our contract. Would you rather find out about that? Because let's say the listing agent did not do their research and you did do your research and looked at the deed. Would you rather have that conversation now before going under contract, or would you rather have it when your people are planning to close and they have to go try to track down Joanne? Or not Joanne, they have to go track down Sally. Right. Look at your deed. Whatever your deed says, that's the first thing off of here. So who received the property was Gregory J., and I got to put my glasses on, Gregory J. Fetterman and Laura Fetterman. Now, let's compare that to what Sonny has on her piece of paper under our MLS, and it is exactly the same. Owner name, if you're looking for it on MLS, is right here, and you'll learn how to really get quickly into that, picking that up. All right, so Gregory Fetterman and Laura Fetterman. All right. Buyer. I know this sounds like a trick question because you're working with the buyers. I'm the buyer's agent, but what are you going to put in the buyer's blank? Where are you going to find that answer? And please don't say I'm going to ask them. ID could work. We're getting closer. We're going to want to do it by however their pre-approval letter is. If I introduced myself and y'all were working with me, I've introduced myself to y'all as what? Scott. I'm Scott Harden. I wrote it up here. I'm Scott Harden. But if I'm buying property and I'm qualifying for a loan, I'm going to be Billy Scott Harden. Good old Southern name, Billy Scott. But it's going to be in my legal name of Billy Scott Harden. Because when they do a pull for my credit, they're going to want to pull Billy Scott, Billy S, B Scott, BS. Imagine that. They're going to want to pull all of my different aliases, right? So how do we know the buyer's name? And oh, by the way, what if my credit is horrible and it's not going to be Billy Scott buying it anyway? Billy Scott and Deanna Berry are both out looking at it, but it's Deanna Berry Harden that actually is going to be the one that qualifies for the loan. I'm not going to be on the loan because I've ruined my credit back in the day. I'm not going to be a buyer. I'll be on the deed when we get later on in the document, but I'm not going to be a buyer on the contract. The buyer on the contract is who qualifies for the loan and who's going to be getting the loan. So here's another good reason to go ahead and get a pre-approval letter, right? You're looking for reasons to have things in place. Wouldn't you love to have every buyer have a pre-approval letter?
Yes.
And aren't you going to require that? And now you've got a copy of it. And now you know who the buyer is, right? Okay, so the buyer blank is going to be, and here's the thing. What if it is that you put, my name is Scott Harden, and then they come back and they say, we have to have the contract changed to where it reflects Billy Scott Harden. Is it really a big deal? No. But if you're busy, and I'm going to say it this way, Jalissa, you probably do like me. You know, if you're doing 40, 50 transactions a year, you got a lot of balls up in the air. You still like doing things like this. You still like doing things like going on vacation. You don't want to be tied down by an extra 5 to 10 minutes because now I'm preparing a document that says Billy Scott Harden and I'm sending it out DocuSign for people to sign it. Just get it right the first time. Right? So whoever's on the loan paperwork, that pre-approval letter is who is getting who is the buyer. All right. Now, street address. Got a bunch of different places where you can get the street address. Yes, ma'am.
You said if it was a loan, what if it's cash?
If it's cash, then you would just ask them how they wanted their name. Because there's not going to be any.
Both of the names?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you're not going to, and the question for the folks on Zoom was, what if it was a cash purchase? Well, with a cash purchase, there's not going to be a lender that's going to be reviewing the documents. There is not going to be any credit check that's going to have to be run and things like that. The only thing I would say in that point is pull up the proof of funds, ask them to say, look, you know, the seller's going to need the proof of funds. And then whatever the account name is, that's kind of what I would have unless they tell you something different as the name. So it's similar, but different. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing too, that it could be that I'm going to put it in, me and Scott Berry are going to buy it together. My brother-in-law, it's going to be Scott Squared LLC. Well, at that point, I don't know, and I don't want to speak out of line with anything legal here, but if I put it as I'm buying it as Scott Harden and Scott Berry, and then when we get to the deed that says we're going to do it as Scott Squared, as long as I could prove I had the money, or he could prove he had the money, or we could prove we had it in a joint fund, what's happening is there's nobody to review it. Where you get into problem is when you get to the underwriter and the underwriter sees, I've even had them replaced before, and this gets into what we're talking about next. I've had it before to where it was Ryan Street and Ryan's Street. And they made us go back and correct the document because there was one letter different between our contract and what was on the appraisal or whatever. I just don't want to get into that. But I don't think and I don't want to speak out of turn and give you bad information, but I don't think on a cash deal it would really matter, because you follow where I'm going, that there's not that checks and balance that I have to make somebody happy with what's on that piece of paper. Yeah. So good question though. I've never even thought of that one. So that's a good question, just rationalizing it through. All right, so we're going to go now to the street address, and there's a bunch of different places you could get the street address. Most often they're going to have the street address in the deed. And if you notice on that deed that we've got it open to, it does have 1412 Boston right underneath the grantee. Because remember, for seller, we looked at grantee. Now, it is possible that somebody could have received the property, not going to be living there, and so it does not have the street address there. And so we're somewhere else that might be pretty reputable that you could use as far as the address. Where else have you seen that? On the MLS listing. And I would take that MLS listing and compare it to where else have we seen it? The real list form. So now let's do a comparison on that. I had a property that was sold over in Kings Grant that was on the corner of Lions Head and I can't even remember the name. This is bad. I've lost too many brain cells. But it was on Lions Head and this little cross road here, and it was the corner house. Well, when you looked it up according to Real List, it actually had the Lions Head address because they were expecting the house to face this way. But whenever the builder built the house for either them or for a client, they instead turned it toward this little side road. So it was just a little stub road that was named, and there was one house here and one house here that faced each other. And then it ended because it went into Notting Hill. So we're going up Lions Head, we turn. So Real List had it listed as Lions Head, but that Rampart, they received mail at Rampart. So it is possible that you would have two conflicting options there. And I'm going to say the one that was the deciding factor for me was when I plugged in GPS, did it recognize Rampart? Because then I knew that people would know, okay, I'm going to go up Lions Head, turn on Rampart, and there's going to be the house. So it is one of those things as far as street address. I'm going to say, let's go ahead and go with what the listing agent, if it's not already on the deed. Deed would be first. Listing agent would be second. Third would be my real list. But those are all places that I would kind of look at to see. And if there's a discrepancy between it, see if there's a logical reason for that discrepancy. We just saw that this property on Boston was on a corner lot as well. It was number 13. It was sitting right there on the corner of the cul-de-sac. So it very likely could be that it could have come up differently when we were doing the real list as well. Okay. All right. So we've got the street, the city, the zip, the county. Of course, there is no reason to fill in state. State's already filled in for us. All right. Next talks about the lot number. Lot number is again going to be on the deed. You see the importance now of that deed being on there. And so it's lot number 13. So we'll fill in 13. Section 3, section 3. So we do section 3. Neighborhood's called Woodchase. So subdivision Woodchase. It is possible that you're going to be selling properties that don't have a subdivision. Okay, that's fine. You don't fill any subdivision. Remember I was talking about the 5 acres out in the middle of the country? If you have 5 acres out in the middle of Hope County or Robinson County or Lee County or wherever out in the country, then what you're going to do is underneath the other description, you're just going to make reference to the meets and bounds. So under other description, everybody see that underneath PIN and PID? In that case, what I would do, and this is my recommendation, would be is to just say meets and bounds description, book blank, page blank. Because what's going to happen is that meets and bounds description is going to be on your deed. It's going to say beginning at a stake, or it's going to say see attachment A, and attachment A is going to break it down into, starting from an iron pipe, going so many degrees, whatever. Every one of these book pages has a number on it. You notice up in the top corner, or in the top of this, actually in the corner as well, there's a stamp that shows what book and page, and that's what I would do. See meets and bounds description, book blank, page blank. Because not everything is going to be on a plat. You don't have to have a plat. Plats are normally when you get into subdivisions. When you start getting out into the country, you're not going to find nearly as many plats. Sometimes you'll find them to where somebody's took and subdivided into like 4 lots. So there may be a plat for those 4 properties, but quite often it's not. Further you start going out, okay? As far as the plat book and page, same thing as what we just saw. It kind of got cut off, but there is a stamp. Somebody hand wrote on this one, page 116, or book 116, page 100. But also down here, there was a stamp that says book 116, page 100. So on your plat, you should be able to find what book and page it is if there is a plat description. All right. And then as far as the deed book and page, of course, we find the deed book and page on the deed. And it is stamped as well up on the deed. And there we go. So it's got 3 different stamps. It's got the actual stamp right here. It's got the book and page right here. And it's got the book and page right there. So 3 different places you've got the book and page to be able to find for that one. Okay. Questions? All right. So we've worn the deed out. That's about it for it. Now we get into questions for our clients. And we're going to start with just the purchase price. And as we look at the purchase price, we have advised our clients. So we're going to say at this point, let's hold questions. If you said, Scott, what would you say if somebody said they wanted to offer $210 for this house? We're going down a rabbit hole. Okay. If I've done my job, then I have prepared them. If we have time at the end, I have 0 problems doing that. Scott, how would you handle the objection of, I want to offer $210 for this house? Because in our market, that's not going to happen. So what would you say? I have no problems doing that, but I don't think we have time to do all of the what ifs. I think at this point, what would we see? This house is listed at $225, offer price. What do we want to do?
And you're saying that the home is valued at $210,000.
Well, no, I'm saying that right now it's listed at 225 and your buyer wants to make an offer on it. What do you think the normal buyer, given the data that we've seen so far, 225, do a full price, 235, do above full price? I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking, and we'll see how that matches up. When I start to represent the seller, we'll look at it. But let's say, because we can't do a whole conversation of how to do pricing, but when you saw what was going on back here, full price or above on every house except one, you start looking at the square footage. Real List says the square footage is, let me see what it says. We will do a quick cursory glance. Real List says the square footage is 2,026. And so our chart for 2026, yeah, there's one that was 2020. So Old Town Drive was 2020. It sold for 223, or listed for 223. Somebody offered 230. So I like our estimation of, let's go up to about a you said 235. 235 is going to be our sales price. Okay. Now, given the market conditions, you've educated your client on what's going on. It's a competitive market. What are we going to make as far as a due diligence deposit? And again, if you want to say, well, what if somebody says they don't want to pay anything? I can tell you how I would answer that, but that's a whole different rabbit hole. In our market, given what we've got, what do you think an offer would look like for a due diligence?
$10,000.
How much?
10.
10? All right, it's a little stronger than I'm used to seeing, but I like it if I'm a seller. So we'll put $10,000 of due diligence fee. How about earnest money?
0.
If you're putting down $10,000, 0 is probably a likely outcome. So we'll say that's okay. You're fronting every bit of it, all up front. Get guns blazing. I want that dadgum house. Okay. Now, again, we're not getting in here to promote how to present offers. That's going to be something your office should be talking to you about, of how to write the offers, how to present what I'm helping you do is filling in blanks. Okay. And if we need to come back of how would you advise a client on filling in these blanks, I'll be happy to do that if we have time. Okay. Now, in this situation, we're going to say there's no additional earnest money, that there is no assumption of any loan, no seller financing, no building deposit. So we're looking at 225 basically. Here's a good thing about doing the online version. If you fill these in by hand, you'll have to do the subtraction on your own. And you learned that in class, just subtract everything from the starting 235. But if you use like our zip forms that we have, and if you haven't got on to zip forms yet, I would highly recommend doing that. It will automatically calculate for you, so you don't have to do any of the adding, subtracting at all. So we're going to have 225 in the bottom blank now. Questions on page 1? All right, page 2, escrow agent. The escrow agent is going to be who is holding that $0 in this case. So if we've got no earnest money being held, we would still want to, at this point, in my opinion, fill in that, because that's going to be your buyer making a decision. If you have your buyer making a decision on anything like this, I would highly recommend having multiple choices for them. So if they say, well, Scott, we don't know who we want to use, or if you ask them, hey, Derek, do you have an attorney that you'd like to use, or would you like to maybe use one of the 3 recommended that I have? If he says, yeah, just let's go with, I don't have an attorney, who do you recommend? Make sure you have them more than one. Don't say, well, I want you to use this one. It's not your decision. Do let them do some research. Now, if they come back to you and you say, I've got 3 different ones that I think do a fantastic job for my buyers, Derek, here are their names. And he goes, well, who did you use when you bought your home? That's not opinion. He's asking for a fact. And I can tell him this, because wouldn't you think that whoever I used would be one of my top 3? Or why the heck did I go to them, right? So if they ask you a direct question like that, then you can give them a direct answer where it is facts. But if you're setting up anything, home inspectors, termite inspectors, HVAC inspectors, loan people, make sure you're giving people multiple options so they can do their own research. And if they choose not to do their research and they choose to make a determination some other way, like Scott, who did you use? Then you're answering a question. You are not steering them in a certain direction. Does that make sense? But please give them options. Don't just say, you got to use this attorney. This is where we're going. Now, they may choose to not do that. They may choose to defer back to you. That's okay. There is a form called the Professional Services Disclosure Form. It's the 760. I'm a whole lot better with numbers than names sometimes, so I may have the name off a little bit. It is in your packet, I think. Kayla, it is in the packet, the 760? Okay, it's in your packet, and we will talk very briefly about it, but that's where it shows that you gave them a choice and they chose to go with a certain person. Okay, so we got the attorney blank filled in. Due diligence period. Now, this depends on a couple of different factors. Number one, what type of loan are you getting? If you are getting a VA loan or an FHA loan, there is what's called the VA FHA or FHA VA addendum that's going to attach to it that says if the appraisal comes in low, it doesn't matter if it's past the original closing date. If the appraisal comes in low, that your buyer is going to be able to get their earnest money back if the seller will not reduce the price. Okay, we offer 235. It's listed at 225. The appraisal comes in at 230. If it's a VA loan or an FHA loan, if the seller will not agree to drop it to 230, then the VA FHA addendum says, I don't care when it happens. If the seller will not play ball and reduce to the price, you can get your earnest money back. That's probably the only bad thing about front loading everything, because now you're not getting any money back. Due diligence is gone. Even if the appraisal comes in low, this due diligence is gone. But if you have some earnest money there, and let's say that we've set it up with a 5 and a 5, the first 5 would be gone. But if the appraisal came in low, even if it was after our closing date was supposed to happen, doesn't matter when the appraisal comes in, they're going to get their money back. Here's the problem with a conventional loan. It doesn't. There is no conventional loan addendum that says if the appraisal comes in low, unless you prepare that through an attorney yourself. And there are some attorney prepared documents, especially with the market we're in with the appraisal gaps and things like that, that are going on that say, if it doesn't appraise and the seller doesn't agree, then I'm going to get my earnest money back. Or if it doesn't appraise and they won't lower the price, I'll pay $10,000 above that appraisal price. But if they still won't sell it for that, I get my earnest money back. You know, there are, but don't draw those up yourself. Those need to be attorney drawn documents. And I'll say it this way, the North Carolina Association of Realtors is not touching that with a 10-foot pole. You will not get any help from NCAR if you ask them for help on doing those kind of forms. Okay, I was on the forms committee for 2 years. They tried to get us for 2 straight years. Every single class, it was, can y'all do a, what is it when it's a rent to own? Lease option. And every single time they were like, no, because we don't need to be doing that. We don't need to be getting into, oh, I'm going to give the seller $5,000 and I'm going to pay them $800 a month, and $200 of that $800 a month is going to go toward their principal. And no, we don't need to be in that. Let the attorneys deal with that. We don't need to do it. We don't need to do lease options. We don't need to get into appraisal gaps and appraisal addendums and all that kind of good stuff. That needs to be the attorney drawing those up. And there are some attorneys that have them out there, and there's some listing agents that will even provide them to you that says, hey, if you're going to offer $10,000 above, here's the addendum. The only thing I would tell you on that is make sure you review the addendum, make sure your client reviews the addendum. And if either of you have any questions about it, make sure that an attorney reviews the addendum with them to make sure you know what they're getting into. Okay. So back to where I was at. VA FHA appraisal is covered. Conventional USDA, the appraisal is not covered. So if you're not front loading all this money, make sure you're giving enough time for not only a home inspection and a termite inspection, but make sure you're also giving enough time for an appraisal. How long is that? Who knows with appraisers the way they are right now. I'm going to say it this way though. If you ask me for my opinion, VA, FHA, in that blank, I would put 2 to 3 weeks. From the day you write your offer, 2 to 3 weeks to have your due diligence period. If you're asking for my opinion, 2 to 3 weeks, FHA, VA. Conventional USDA, minimum 30 days. Because we are just at a complete stand. Have y'all heard about that? Y'all working with agents that appraisers are taking forever? I'll try to pull it up. I got a email during August for a buyer client of mine, well, the one on Cape Fear I was telling you about earlier, that the state employees credit union, not bashing them, but the state employees credit union said the appraisal would not be able to be completed until September the 24th or something. This was August. My client approved for the appraisal to be done, and they've already emailed us in writing saying, hey, it's going to be, I'll pull it up. Appraisers are that far backed up. So if the appraisal is contingent, if the price is contingent on people losing extra money, which in most cases it is, make sure you're protecting that extra money as well as you can. VA FHA already protected. All you got to worry about during the due diligence period is what other inspections are they going to be doing? Home inspection, termite, HVAC, swimming pool, fireplace, whatever. Okay. Now for the settlement date, when you fill in a settlement date, a couple of things to keep in mind is it realistic for the lender? Lenders are going to tell you, can I get this closed in 30 days? Is it going to take 40 days? Are we backed up right now and it's going to take me 60 days? They're going to be able to tell you what is a reasonable amount of time for them their processing department to be able to do the loan. Yes, you would love to close in 30 days. We get paid. They get to move in the house. I'm living in an Airbnb. I got to get in there. Okay, yeah. Ultimately, paperwork has to be done and what's realistic. So that's question number one. How quickly can the lender get it done? Number two is going to be how quickly can the seller move out? If it's an occupied home, you may have to consider what their timetable is in addition to what your buyer's timetable is. Thanks. If we are talking about, one of those things to where we're having delays with the inspections and you say, look, I want to make sure that I cover myself so that we don't run out of time. That's going to be one of the things to consider as well. So all of those play a factor in your date. Your client's best interest first. Ask them how quickly do they want to move. They say 30 days. Okay, fantastic. Let's talk to your lender and see if they can get you done in 30 days. That's why you get them completely pre-approved with all of their pay stubs and all of their bank statements and don't just do a pre-qual where they call in on the phone. Say, look, if you really want to close in 30 days, you need to get with your lender and have a pre-approval where all you need is a contract, an appraisal, and no loss in job employment. Now they don't have to have any other paperwork. They've approved you. They've looked at every one of your bank statements. They've looked at every one of your pay stubs. You're good to go. So talk to them about getting fully qualified if their timetable is short. That's going to shorten what the lender, because then when you call the lender goes, all I need is an appraisal and we can close. Because you're giving them the contract, right? Okay. So that date, focus on your client, what your client's needs are, compare that to what the lender says they can do and how far along they are in the process. And then ultimately, if you need to, talk to the other agent about how does this timeline match with your seller. Used to be, we would not have asked that question up front. I would have put down what my buyer wanted. The seller could figure it out or they could counter it. Right now, you get one shot. So if there's any question like that you have, if it's a vacant house, I don't worry about them. But if it's not a vacant house, I'm going to ask that question. So let's say we've got a fully qualified buyer, and let's say that they are looking at wanting to be in that house yesterday. Next thing that I would look at is, and this is where we're going to take a break after I do this. I like having my Fridays where if I can sneak away, I can go grab a drink at Bubba's. I like to be able to go away for the weekend if I can. I like actually not having Mondays to where I have to worry about everything in the world going on. Closings on Friday and Mondays, I try not to do at all. Okay. So let's say we look at the calendar and they say we can close in 30 days. 30 days from today would basically put us on a Thursday, the 7th. So let's go ahead and make it for October the 6th. That'll be a Wednesday. Now, if your client, again, your client's needs need to come before your needs. My needs are I don't need to be closing on Friday or Monday. But there's a good reason why I also don't want it to be on Friday or Monday for their needs. And we'll talk about that after we come back from break with the very next paragraph at the top of the next page. But it is one of those things that we want to talk with them about. Do you have certain days off? Because if they get every Wednesday off, then we certainly are going to want to plan it for a Wednesday. If Wednesday is their day from HE double hockey sticks every single week, then we don't want to plan it for Wednesday. We want it to be a day where they can feel comfortable. Now, here's the thing. It may not hit that target date, but we at least want to plan for success. So if somebody says, look, I can usually get off work pretty early on Tuesdays. Okay, let's book it for a Tuesday. If they just absolutely say, it's got to be on a Friday, I'll work with them. But we do have a little bit of a, hey, we want to get in there early in the morning. And we'll talk about why. And some of you, I can already tell from your expression, you know why I'm saying you need to get in there early on Friday morning. We need to be the first appointment of the day so that we can knock that out before it gets late in the afternoon, which still accomplishes what I want. Questions? Good so far? Too fast, too slow? All right. So I know we got 4 things to hit. I know I tried to hit the first thing during the first hour. We did pretty good with that. This one is going to get faster. We are going to get faster with this. I will say it this way. Once you know how to create an offer, you'll be able to present it to a seller. There are certain things you're going to talk to the seller about that you don't talk to the buyer about. But overall, terms are terms. And once you have those terms, like we're doing right now, you're going to be able to talk to that seller about, here's what we're looking at. This is what our offer looks like. So that's the last hour. It was intended to be the last hour. I'm not behind schedule on anything. Any questions before we go from the Zoom crowd? Have I put them to sleep? Okay, good. And anything in here? All right, y'all take a 10-minute break. I've got 10:57. Let's make it an 8-minute just so we can get started back. Let's go with 11:05. We'll get started back. All right, I am ready to start back. All right, we've got some ground to cover, so we're going to go ahead and get started back. If folks are finishing up outside, they can come on back in. So some of you were definitely giving me the impression that you understood about the closing on Fridays especially. It's very important that you prepare your clients. When they get a date in mind, like October the 6th, a lot of times that buyer is going to expect that that is a hard and fast date. They're going to want to go ahead and schedule for people to deliver furniture. They're going to want to have all their friends over that weekend. They're going to have their parents coming into town to help them move. And you guys know that it is a fluid business, that there is no guarantee this far out, 30 days, that I can guarantee you that it's going to close on time. So it's good to go ahead and prepare them ahead of time. So if somebody says, look, it needs to be on a Friday, we're going to be out of town, we're coming back into town, whatever their reasoning is for having it on Friday, please explain to them this process of closing. And this is not a filling in the blank, but this is one of those little pitfalls that if you don't explain, when I was broker in charge, remember me hearing about complaints? This was one of the major things I heard people complaining about. It said I was closing on the 6th and it's the 6th and I'm mad and I'm going to terminate and I'm going to, no, you're not. Contract doesn't say that you can do that. Explaining to people up front is extremely important about what the rules of our game are. And according to this, closing says that they don't get their keys until it records unless there is a provision put in writing. Closing says that they have to sign all their papers in front of the attorney. That attorney has to send all of their paperwork to a lender unless it is a cash sale. At that point, it kind of solves the problem. But if it was a lender, they're going to have to send all the paperwork to the lender. The lender's going to have to approve that everything has been signed properly. And then it's going to have to go to the courthouse. And when I say go to the courthouse, I'm going to say that most all of that is now electronically for e-filing. You don't know if there's going to be 10 people in front of you or there's going to be 100 people in front of you because it's all electronic and you all go into the queue. Used to, they had two options. They could go electronically and they could take it to the courthouse. So if you had somebody that just had to, that you could run the deed down there as the paralegal, they could run the deed down there and get it recorded. Cumberland County, at least I know at this point, will not allow that to happen unless they've changed something in the last 2 weeks. That is completely outside of your control. It's completely outside of the buyer's control. It's completely outside of the seller's control. But if we get to a 2 o'clock closing on Friday afternoon, which a lot of the attorneys are not even letting you close that late anymore because they know the problem that's going to happen. But if you close at 2 o'clock on Friday, it's got to go to the lender. Lender doesn't review it until 4 o'clock and you don't get submitted to the e-filing until 4:15. There may be already enough people in queue. And guess what? Nobody's going to stay and work late. It will stay in queue until Monday morning, which guess what? Means that a seller is not going to get their money and a buyer is not going to get their keys, most likely. And now everything that they had set, and this even holds true for the 6th, if they bank on the 6th and they took the rest of the week off and the weekend so they could do all of their moving, and then they go in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the 6th, they're not going to have the 6th. They're going to have to wait till the 7th to get their keys. Y'all follow? Have that conversation. Again, I could tell you how I say it. And if we get to the end of class and there's extra time, I can give you what I would say to somebody. But y'all have read scripts before? It sounds like a script. It needs to be, how would you explain it to a client that, look, you're going to get your keys once it goes through this process. Make sure you're doing it just so that they know. Even though they may come back and say, I don't remember us having that conversation, in your heart of hearts, you know you told them. And you're still going to feel, I don't know what the best word, you're going to feel tugged at them and their situation. But you go, there's nothing I could have done to change that situation. That was a hard thing for me. That was one of those things. I put myself into the buyer's position or the seller's position in a lot of situations when I was a new agent. And I still do to some extent. But there are some times when I go, I did everything I literally possibly could, and it just didn't go their way, and I can't make that better. But if we talk to them about it, maybe they can be preemptive and not set up everything for that. They can set it up for what if there is a delay. If we're planning on closing on a Wednesday, let's don't have anything delivered until maybe Saturday. Okay. All right, so nothing else to fill in on the blanks on page 3. Page 4. Where are we going to find out if there's any items that are leased or not owned? Where are we going to find out if there are any items that do not convey? The MLS cut sheet. The only way you're going to know that answer is if you represent the seller and you're in dual agency and you had that conversation, or from the MLS cut sheet, which in this case, we're saying I am the buyer's agent. I do not represent the seller. So the seller would have had to tell their agent. And on the listing agreement, some of you probably seen the listing agreement, but this exact format is on the listing agreement verbatim. It is the exact same list. It is the exact same questions written the exact same way. So when the listing agent went over this with them and they said none and none, in MLS, the agent did not disclose any exclusions. Hopefully that's the truth. Hopefully that was something that the seller and their listing agent went over so that it has been documented properly. Now, if they are going to take grandma's chandelier, make sure you're looking for that. Make sure you look in your sheet and say, oh, they're not going to be leaving the Ring doorbell. They're going to take the Ring doorbell with them. Whatever it is that they're going to take with them that does not convey. As a buyer's agent, make sure you are looking, because again, if you put something in there that doesn't stay and you send that offer over, what does that probably create? It creates a counteroffer possibility. And do you really in this market want to have anything that could even remotely be a counteroffer? One shot, right? Let's make that one shot count. So make sure you're looking MLS cut sheet. If you're not familiar with where it is on the MLS cut sheet, it is about halfway down the page, right there. Inclusions, none. Exclusions, none. So when we get to items leased or not owned, none. Other items that do not convey, none. Now, at the top of the next page under personal property, we would also then fill in none, unless your buyer wanted to ask for something, because these are the inclusions. What are they including? Are they including a refrigerator? Are they including a washer dryer? Are they including a patio furniture? Are they including whatever? Okay. If there are any inclusions, they're going to leave something for the buyer, then it's going to go into the blank of personal property that's going to stay. If this cut sheet tells me they're not leaving anything, you are now asking the seller to leave something they weren't prepared to leave. Again, in this market, I don't think I'd be doing that. In another market, it may not say refrigerator. Your buyer says, hey, I'd like for him to leave the refrigerator. 5 years ago, Jalissa, did you ever do that? Ask for a refrigerator that they didn't put in there? Would you ever do it now? Exactly. Yeah, the buyers are actually buying them the appliances for their new place now. I have actually seen an addendum. This was amazing to me. I saw an addendum on one of the properties come across that the buyer offered to pay the seller's closing expenses. So not only did the buyer pay their own closing expenses, but they agreed to pay the taxes for the seller, to pay the deed prep for the seller, and to pay the revenue stamps for the seller. So now the seller has no expenses whatsoever, no closing costs, no home warranty, and they don't even have to pay for their own contractual binding because it was an addendum. Yeah, it was weird. I never thought I'd see that. But anyway, so personal property, be careful of this too. We are going to have markets that go up, they're going to go down. What goes up must come down. When we get back into a market to where folks are a little bit more lenient and they're giving a little bit more away, please be careful, because when you start asking for too many things, the lender doesn't like that. So if they say they're going to leave the refrigerator, washer, dryer, the lawnmower, the patio furniture, the swing in the backyard, the trampoline, the lender starts to kind of, I would say, just get a little bit uncomfortable with all of those personal property things, because here's what it could be construed at is you're trying to buy the offer. You're trying to entice them or induce them by giving things. Imagine this, if it was a builder that kept offering a lot of personal property. Oh, we're going to buy you a refrigerator. We're going to buy you a washer and dryer. We're going to buy you a lawnmower. We're going to buy you an edger. We're going to buy you a blower. Is the buyer being coerced to go to that builder versus another new construction because they're getting all these personal property things? Do y'all follow where I'm going? So lenders have a little bit of heartburn, I would say, if you ask for a lot of, not to say that you couldn't do it. Here's what I'm saying is, If the seller says they're going to leave all that stuff and the buyer says they want all that stuff, maybe have the attorney draw up a separate bill of sale. Because the lender may only want to see things like refrigerators, washers, and dryers. That's going to be a conversation to have with the attorney, okay, and with the lender of what are you going to allow. It brings up something, it's amazing when I teach this class of how some things come together. The cash sale, I've got a cash sale going on right now with a condo. It's going to stay fully furnished except for 5 things, a Keurig, some blue vases that are in, but I mean, when we walk in and we see a dining room table, we see a couch, my first experience ever of dealing with a furnished property. But okay, for me, it got lucky because it was a cash deal. It wasn't a lender that was going to say, well, why are they leaving all of that stuff? But personal property, it's things that are going to be included. Most often you're going to look on the cut sheet. And then if we do get into a market to where they're not offering the refrigerator and your buyer says, I want that refrigerator to stay, or I want that refrigerator in the garage to stay, then you can put that into personal property. Personal property, they can ask for anything. These are the things that's got to stay. They did not exclude anything from this list. So make sure your buyer understands that basketball goal that's permanently there is going to stay. All right. If you go back and that basketball goal has been removed, that was permanently fixed to the property with concrete and it's gone, when they get to closing, they can cause a stink. They may be like, I'm glad that thing's gone. But anyway, personal property. Questions about that? That's another one of those kind of tricky situations of, you know, what is the seller willing to leave? What is the buyer wanting? And can we make a mutual agreement? And then it may be even after the fact that the buyer and seller end up deciding, hey, we'll leave the the washer and dryer. Does your buyer need it? And then again, it's a separate bill of sale rather than being on the contract. Question?
If all that stuff is left after the close, it does belong to the buyer, is that correct?
That's a legal question. Zoom question was, if they leave it in the house, does it then become the personal property, or does it become the property of the new buyer just because it was left with the house? I'm going to say that I don't think so, but I'm going to let you talk to an attorney about that one. Anything? Yeah, Will Martin. Yeah. Yeah, contact Will Martin on that one, because yeah, I'm going to say that the seller would have some form of getting that back if they really, but the likelihood is very slim. Okay. All right. And I'll say it this way. I mentioned to you earlier, y'all can call me. If it gets to a point where I don't feel like I can accurately answer the question for you, I'll tell you just what I told that. You know, you need to talk to an attorney about that. Or if it's something that's really more company related, I may say you need to see how your company would handle that. Okay. All right. Anything else? So we're going better. We made it through 3 pages in 15 minutes. So a little bit better this time. Next page. The blanks are going to be at the bottom, or the check boxes are going to be at the bottom, but I do want to, again, if I'm representing a buyer and I'm setting a buyer up for what to expect as we go through this process, there is a very important paragraph on page 6 that is paragraph D. And I do feel like that as a buyer's representative, I do need to explain to my buyer exactly what this says, and they can read it in all capital letters. The property is being sold in its current condition. Buyer and seller acknowledge and understand that they may, but are not required to, engage in negotiations for repairs, improvements to the property. They may, but are not required to. So Jalissa, what that means, if I'm explaining to her, what that means is we can have all the inspections we want and they do not have to do a thing. And then it's our decision of, do we want to move forward or do we not want to move forward? Here's the kicker. You had told me earlier that we were willing to give $10,000 worth of due diligence. This $10,000 is not coming back. If we do inspections and you find something that makes you uncomfortable and the seller says they're not going to fix it, you are not going to get this money back. Okay. If we do it during the due diligence period, you are going to get this money back. Let's take it that there was a split, 5,000, 5,000. If we do it during the period, this will not come back to you. This will come back to you. But a seller saying, I'm not going to fix it, I'm not going to discount the price because it's broken, I'm not going to negotiate with you, period, that does not call for a breach of contract. It is the seller's right. The seller's saying they're selling it to you right the way it is. That may be the time when somebody has given a big due diligence deposit like that to ask one more time, are you comfortable knowing that is the requirements? And they may say, can we go back and change that? And I'm not going to for this scenario because I've definitely seen it. Derek threw out a scenario that I've seen many times. I'm wondering how many times was that and I don't mean this to sound bad, but I'm wondering how many times was that the buyer being fully educated, or how much of that was a buyer's agent wanting to get an offer accepted? To me, those should be in sync with each other, that I'm excited to get my buyer's offer accepted as long as it is what my buyer wants. But it makes me question sometimes. I'm not going to say that it wouldn't happen. I had a seller that a buyer that put down a $10,000 due diligence. Absolutely. But I knew their reasoning behind what they were doing, and I could support what they were doing. And they went into it full eyes wide open doing it, and they understood the risk. Just make sure you're explaining to your client. And this is one of the big paragraphs right here of the property. It's in all caps. The property is being sold in its current condition. They don't have to fix anything. Okay. Also, please point out to them, though, at the same time, that they do have the ultimate power. And that's in paragraph G. And it says, provided that the buyer has delivered any agreed upon due diligence fee, buyer shall have the right to terminate the contract for any reason or no reason. So they do not have to fix anything. However, this due diligence money you will lose, but this earnest money you can get back, and you don't have to give them a reason why you are backing out. So they have the power to hold your due diligence. You have the power to say, well, I'm not going to buy your house. So it's a trade-off. And that's exactly how I'd explain it to them. Again, using your own words, but explain to them that, yes, that sounds like it really sucks for me as the buyer, that they don't have to fix anything. But it's also to where if there's something physically wrong with their home and they refuse to do it, then you can just say, I'm walking off. I'm walking away. You go find some other sucker that's going to buy it. You've got this much out of me. You ain't getting any more out of me. Now, I will say this, and we're going to move forward from it from a standpoint of, if I've got $10,000 invested, am I really going to be very anxious to walk away as a buyer? Do you think it hurts a buyer's negotiating position the larger this number gets? Yes. Ultimately, it's the buyer's decision. Remember what I talked about in the first hour? They know me, they like me, they trust me. They might not know me, but they need to like me and they need to trust me. I need to be a likable individual that they can work with and they feel comfortable with, and they need to trust me. And at that point in time, do they trust what I'm giving them as far as advice on what we need to do? Okay. And at that point, if they trust, hey, this is where we're going, this is the direction we're going, fantastic. Okay. Now, as far as the bottom of the page, what kind of loan are they getting? You're going to get that from, or are they paying cash, of course. Top one says check the box if it's a cash deal, and do you or do you not have a proof of funds letter for them? Second one says, or there's going to be a loan. You're going to get that from where? The lender. You're going to find out that pre-approval letter should tell you it's a VA loan, it's a FHA loan, it's a conventional loan, whatever you may need for that. And what is the principal amount of the loan? Are they putting no money down? Are they putting 20% down? What are they doing as far as the blank for principal amount? Now, other types of loans that they've got as far as a X box with an other type, that would be if they were doing some kind of personal money loan or something like that. I'm going to say that if you encounter something outside, somebody says they're going to do something other than an FHA, a VA, a conventional, or a USDA loan, then I would say talk with your broker in charge, because that's not one of the norm. If it was one of the norm, it would be listed on this piece of paper, because the forms committee sets it up that way. So if somebody says they're going to be getting any kind of different loan, just understand that there may be some extra stuff that a more experienced person would need to help you with. Okay. Now, as far as second mortgages or other funds, again, if they're going to be starting to get two different mortgages, used to be you guys weren't in the business, but have y'all heard of like when they were doing the 80-20 loans and the 90-10 loans, where you get an 80% loan for the fixed rate of the price, then you get a adjustable rate mortgage for the other 20%? That's kind of what happened right before the bubble burst for us back in 2010, 9, 8, whenever. Different parts of the country had it at different times. Some of you may be from different areas. Ours burst about 2010. That was part of the problem, was that they were doing 80% loans that were fixed and then 20% loans that were adjustable. And then when that adjustment hit, people were not able to make their payments any longer. So if you start seeing somebody saying they're going to get a second mortgage, it's going to be this for the first mortgage and this for the second mortgage, even as experienced as I am, I would kind of question them of, why are we doing this? Is now really the right time for you to buy a home? Because again, trusted advisor. If you're having to go out there and borrow money for the first 80% and then borrow money for the next 20%, are you really in a financial position that it's in your best interest to purchase a home? Not sure, especially when you're dropping money for your own closing costs and things like that. So if you see somebody that is going to do some kind of a first loan, second loan, I'm not going to say that it doesn't have its merits at certain places or that it couldn't be done. Certain lenders may be offering it, but just be a little careful about that and have them kind of get some advice on, is this the best financial move for me and my family? Okay. As far as other funds, FHA will allow like the very first townhouse I bought, I was teaching school, we talked about, and I was a baseball coach. So I wasn't making a whole bunch of money, wasn't married at the time. And so I bought a townhouse over at Northview Villas, right across the street from Methodist University. So I'd be close to Pine Forest. And I bought that, and I didn't want to deplete every bit of my savings. So my grandmother actually gave me a gift letter. I paid her back $500 a month. But it is possible that you could have family members that would do stuff with FHA. That was an FHA program that I'm sure is still going on. So if you do have someone that's going to be receiving other funds from other sources like that, that's what that's intending for it to be right there. Okay. Are y'all already getting the NC Realtors? What is that weekly? It's a weekly newsletter. It's a weekly update. It's a week. Yesterday, anyway, did y'all get the one? That's exactly what that was talking about yesterday. If you didn't get an email from NC Realtors, it's probably that you need to get logged in and get a NERDS number and all that kind of good stuff. But yesterday, the question and answer for Will Martin was on what if I'm receiving other funds? It was talking about an agent who had a buyer, and the buyer was going to get monies from somebody else to make the deal go through, but it wasn't from a bank. It was like from a friend. And it's not cool. That's not able to be done. Okay. Next checkbox is, do you or do you not have to sell a property? Of course, they may want to sell a property, but not be obligated to sell the property, or vice versa. They may think they can hold on to it as a rental and then buy this next one, but the lender is going to be the one. The pre-approval is going to say, is it contingent upon an appraisal? Is it contingent upon a contract? Is it contingent upon selling a house? Because at that point, the lender is going to say, I need to see the closing statement, the CD, Alta, HUD, whatever, from 444 Foxlayer Drive before I can go buy the next house. So you're going to learn that answer to the question from the pre-approval letter. Okay. Now, as far as the next check boxes, those go into if you do have a house to sell. Is it on the market right now? Is it under contract right now? So there's a house that has to be sold. Are you out there actively marketing it? Or have you already found the buyer, and now the buyer, the seller of that home, is now becoming a buyer? So those apply to if you've got a seller that is either already under contract or is contemplating going on the market. Okay. That might be another one I would say for your broker in charge to kind of help you. If you get into a contingent sale situation, Jalissa, you got agents working with you? No? Okay. I was going to say, as a broker in charge, I was going to ask you, would you agree that that's kind of one of those for a new agent? Anything with a contingency would probably be, I'm going to say, yeah, sit down with your broker in charge and say, here's the scenario. They've got a house they want to sell, or they've got a house they've already sold. We're going to go try to look for a house for them to buy. I think that requires a little bit more direct expertise in handling the situation, so you don't get yourself in trouble. Okay. As far as the next check boxes are, did you get the property owner's disclosure in the mineral oil and gas? Yes, we did. So we can check that box off. I know you've learned about the little loophole that comes in there, the 3-day loophole, that if you don't have it ahead of time of your offer, that you can back out. Y'all talked about that in class? Yes. Okay. All right. There are some exemptions, and at the top of the next page, on page 8, I like to use this time to kind of advise that there are guidelines that you can use. So this says it's exempt from the North Carolina Mineral and Oil and Gas Rights Mandatory Disclosure Statement. We're going to look at the guidelines here in just a minute, but there are guidelines that you can refer back to. So if you're taking your notes right now, this can be your notes, your Cliff Notes, but there's also guidelines from the actual forms committee that they put together that says, hey, in this blank, this is what we would, not what the anticipated answer would be, but this is what it's asking you for. So if you haven't ever seen the guidelines, they're 2G, and you do have a set of it in your packet here for you guys that are on Zoom. Kayla's going to pull it up in just a little bit. Oh, there we go. All right, so she's got it pulled up there. Guidelines for completing the offer to purchase and contract. And then you can just scroll down if there's something you go, well, what's an exemption for the MOG? Well, the exemption for the MOG would be in paragraph 5. So Kayla, see if you can roll down to paragraph 5. There's paragraph 1. It talks about names. All right, keep coming down. And yep, still got a little ways to go. We're looking for 5. There's 2. There's 3, 4, and there's 5 for your buyer representations. And we'll keep coming down. There's your property disclosure. If you're buying a new construction, then of course there is a exclusion where you don't have to do the property disclosure because it is first sale of a dwelling never inhabited. So there does not have to be an RPODS for a new construction home. If you are, let's say a tenant is wanting to buy the home from the landlord, and they call you in because you're friends with the landlord or you're friends with the tenant and they don't know what to do, and they say, we want you to help us. And you go, yes, I like making money. I'll be happy to do that. There is the situation to where, let's see, it's where a owner, can you roll up just a little bit more? Okay, let's see. We don't want to do that, but okay, 12. Let's see if we can go up one more. I know we've got one. Co-owner to co-owner transfer. Okay. I wouldn't have called it a lease with an option to purchase, but the form does here. Lease with an option to purchase where leasee, so the person renting it, occupies or intends to occupy the dwelling. So if somebody's living in the home and they've been renting it for the last 5 years, who's going to know more about that home? The person living in it for the last 5 years or the person that owns it? The person living in it. So in that situation, it is exempt from the RPOD statement because it's like you've been living in it, you've leased it, you're going to know more about it than us getting a statement from the seller. So why make the seller go through a statement?
It does say,
Okay.
I was just in that
Yeah.
situation, and under that 47E2, it
Uh-huh.
specifically, even without the lease to option to purchase, even without that
This one?
clause, it gives the exact situation you're describing.
All right, perfect, good. So for the folks on Zoom, Kate or Katie? Kate. Yeah, Kate said that it was under the general statute for North Carolina law that was an exception that could be taken into account. So for you guys on Zoom, I know it's hard for you to hear unless you got this beautiful microphone sitting up close for you. All right, so we're going to continue on down, but that does show you the guidelines. So if you have questions, I'm going to say review the guidelines. It's certainly good. I mean, the forms committee that put together the actual contract took the time to put together this document as well. And so it's going to have some helpful hints for you just as you go through. All right, paragraph 7 has some check boxes. How are we going to know how long the sellers own the property? The deed. On that stamp that says the deed book and page, it also has a date on there. And that stamp is going to be how long they've owned it. That's going to be extremely important on things like for FHA. If a flipper has bought, and a flipper doesn't have to be a negative connotation, please understand. But if a flipper has bought the home, FHA has a guideline, and I can't remember if it's 90 days or 180 days, but you cannot resell that property in a shorter period of time than that 90 or 180 day window on an FHA loan. Conventional doesn't have that. VA doesn't have that. Conventional could have that. Let me rephrase. Conventional could have it if the bank or lending institution had that as a guideline themselves. But as a whole, conventional normally doesn't. But if you've got that FHA buyer and they want to go buy that house and it looks beautiful and you look at it and go, when I pulled the deed, that thing was only bought a month and a half ago, that is going to be a problem for your FHA buyer. So again, a good reason to have the deed, learning more about the property, helping your buyer make an informed decision. Because guess what? If they put that due diligence money down, they get their offer accepted, and then they find out later on they can't go FHA and there's no other way for them to qualify. That's money they've lost. If I can help them not lose that money, I'm going to sleep a whole lot better at night, because I'm going to sleep pretty bad knowing that I cost somebody $10,000 because I didn't do my research to look at a deed when I already could pull it up. Y'all saw how easy it was. Okay, so make sure you're looking after. As far as the lead-based paint, this property was not built prior to 78. As far as the homeowners association, really the only place we're going to find that, well, two places. Where are we going to find it? Not on the, well, they could make mention of it. Yeah, absolutely. It could be on the deed. It's not going to give you the information. The cut sheet could give you some of the basic information from the agent. If you're looking for HOA, it's right here. And again, you guys will get very familiar with the form. Right now, it's just, I know exactly where it is because I've done this for a lot. But HOA is right here as far as is there an HOA or not, and what would the fee be? And then the second place that's going to help us with more of this, hopefully, is page 3 of your property disclosure. On page 3 of the disclosure, it should have, if they have checked off yes, it should have for you the information about who the property manager is, as far as the name and telephone number of the president. Again, that's going to be one of those things that sometimes it doesn't have all of that information filled in. Do the very best job you can to help your client decide, is there an HOA? Hopefully the listing agent has done a good disclosure of, is there an HOA? I'm not sure why a seller would not make representation if they know there was an HOA. Even if they said no representation, because I don't know what the HOA covers any longer. Okay, I get that. You may not know that, but still, is there an HOA and how much do you pay a month? I mean, it's a bank deduction. You're probably going to know, but they don't have to. They can check no representation. All right. So as we go through the next part, it talks about what the seller's obligations are. We will definitely hit that when we get to the switching hats section of the class. How you want the deed to be made out, of course, that's going to be by who you want on the deed. Most likely it's going to be the same as the very first paragraph where we had the buyer name. But it could be, again, my credit is shot. Deanna's credit is awesome. So now it may be in both Deanna and my name. Okay, so that's really going to be a question for the buyer. How does the buyer want to take ownership of the property? If you have an unmarried couple, I will tell you this is, again, one of the pitfalls, and I'm trying to hit you with as much as I can. If you have an unmarried couple and they're trying to get a VA loan and they're trying to use both of them to qualify, dum, dum, da, dum, 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 da, dum. They have got to get married before both of them can qualify for that loan and to be on the deed. I had that happen. They went to the justice of the peace and got married, and then they had their formal wedding ceremony on their scheduled time. But to be able to buy the house on the time that they wanted to buy it on, they had to get married. They're still married, by the way. I sold their house for them not long ago, so I guess it worked out. My house brought them together. All right, but be careful on that one. Most of the time, it's going to be very cut and dried. Whatever's on the pre-approval letter is the buyer. Whatever is the buyer is going to be the deed, unless you've got a situation maybe where one spouse does not work. And we do get that quite a bit. And when I say don't work, does not work earning income, because a lot of times it's, taking care of the family and things like that, that is absolutely work. So, all right. Now, I is going to be the agreement to pay buyer's closing expenses. When I first got into the business, we had an addendum that said buyer will pay blank toward closing, seller picks up the rest of the bill. It was called the closing cost addendum. It is no longer around anywhere. But it was that way that sellers were so accustomed to paying closing expenses that they would agree to a blank check, basically. Buyer, you give me $1,000 toward your closing expenses, I'll pay all your other closing expenses for you. Sounds completely different than what y'all are experiencing and hearing in the world right now, right? So given the terms and kind of what we are experiencing right now with offers, how much are we going to ask for buyers' closing expenses? 0. That's what I would do. We can talk about what if we did ask for closing. And then, of course, as far as the bottom, do they want a home warranty? Don't want a home warranty? Do they want to ask the seller for a home warranty? First thing would be is to see if the seller's offering one. And so again, in our market, probably not, but let's look back at the cut sheet and see if Sunny Seller is offering us a home warranty. Home warranty is right here below the school district and it says home warranty, no. On our scenario, do we want to ask for a home warranty? Not if we want to be accepted. No, I'm just kidding. We could. I've had a few that have been accepted because the other terms were the most acceptable. I mean, to a seller, it's just a bottom line at that point. They don't care how you spend the money. It's bottom line. All right. So now we're over to page 11. And we've got, and by the way, they could buy a home warranty even if they didn't get one from the seller. They could buy it separately, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Possessions, if you have any buyer that wants to take possession early, you have any seller that wants to keep possession late, please, 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 please talk to your broker in charge before getting into that. I have experienced both sides of that transaction. I had let a buyer move into my house early before closing because there was a good, reasonable explanation and I trusted everything was going to go fine. I have also had a seller that stayed in the home that I'm currently in. They sold it to me in April, but didn't want to move out till school let out back in 2005. And I said, that's fine. I got a house in Haymount. I'll keep living here and y'all move out when y'all want to move out. Because again, I trusted them. I wanted the house. I wanted to lock in the interest rate. So I closed in April. It worked out beautifully both times. I can guarantee you as a broker in charge, I heard horror stories about how bad it was with a buyer moving in early or a seller holding over and staying in after possession. Not as much with that, but that buyer moving in early, there have been some doozies. Be very careful, okay? They're basically moving into a house they don't own, and they need to understand what they can and can't do, and the seller needs to understand the positives and the negatives before agreeing to it, and vice versa. If you have anybody that wants to do that as a buyer's agent, they want to move in early, please talk to your broker in charge, get some good counsel on that. Or if you are in a situation where it's a mentor that you're working with instead of a broker in charge because the firm is bigger and you have a mentor instead, please talk to your mentor. Okay. Now, what other forms may be going in? Well, the additional provisions addendum, and Kayla, if you can pull that one up for us. The additional provisions addendum is a form that most of the time was getting attached to contracts, but I'm going to say right now it's been less attached. Paragraph 1 was what I always used it for, was the expiration of an offer, saying that this offer has a limited shelf life. I want to know something within 48 hours or 24 hours or 36 hours or by Friday or whatever. With the market we're in again, am I really going to put a deadline on a seller? Seller will be like, I'll put the deadline on you. But when the market does settle out again, I do think that's something that, hey, my buyers want to know an answer within a reasonable amount of time. For me, reasonable amount of time was within 48 hours. That gives the agent 24 hours to get up with their client, because sometimes it may be impossible to kind of get up with their client immediately. And then, of course, that gives them the night to think about it, to sleep on it, to pray on it, whatever they want to do. But 48 hours to me was very reasonable to be able to say, hey, I made an offer. My buyers would like to know an answer. Because if you're not going to accept it, we need to go ahead and move on and try to find another house. Okay. So that's what that form would be doing. This is talking about if there was not a septic tank on there, you wanted to have it septic inspection. This would be if you're buying a property and there's a tenant in there. Kayla, if you can scroll down just a little bit more. All right, perfect. So the tenant, let's scroll on down. This is where people used to add in a lot of stuff, and be very careful right here. You can add in if you wanted repairs and or improvements to be done. Seller agrees prior to settlement date and at seller's expense to complete the following items. This was back when folks were always putting in their offer. They wanted the carpets professionally cleaned before closing. They wanted the grass cut 3 days before closing. They wanted the refrigerator. Some people would put that there with like a new construction. They wanted the builder to give them a refrigerator or a refrigerator allowance because that would be an improvement. We're not seeing this document used a whole lot, again, because it's pretty much whatever the seller is given, and we're not going to ask for anything else. But when the market does turn, this is going to be the form, and I'm going to say it this way: be very cautious that you are not practicing law that violates the code of ethics. And so make sure you are not doing anything that is drawing up these huge. If you're putting in there, talk to your broker in charge, but if you're putting in there that you want the grass cut 3 days prior to closing, I don't think you're practicing law. And as long as that's the wish of your client, you are relaying the wishes of your client. So I think you're covered, but again, I'm not your broker in charge. I will take it to the extent that Jimmy Townsend, I love Jimmy. Jimmy is a CYA to nobody else's CYA. And he had an attorney draw up an addendum for anything like that that you wanted. If you wanted the grass cut, there was a certain verbiage that you put on the contract because that was how the attorney drew up the contract or drew up the statement. And then you never, ever had to worry about being accused of practicing law because you weren't practicing law. The lawyer had practiced law and you were writing down what the lawyer had said. If you wanted a, house cleaning, if you want, I don't even know what else he had, but from what I understand, and I've never worked for him, but I love it. That keeps your people out of trouble. We don't need to be out there drawing up a whole bunch of documents. We're filling in the blanks. Have y'all kind of figured that by how I've treated this today? We are filling in blanks is what we're doing. We're not creating these things that are going to be litigated potentially. Okay. If we scroll on up to page 2, page 2 talks about if there's a manufactured home, and closest and nearest and dearest to my heart with the pool. I sold a pool earlier. I now have a listing that has a pool. Who's going to be responsible for getting that pool ready for inspection? If it has been closed down for the season, which we are getting close to, who's going to be opening it up and paying for it to close back down? That talks about your pool. So if you sell any houses with pool, it's very, very important to add that attachment, in my personal opinion, to your contract. All right. Now, it also talks about additional signatures. So Kayla, if you can go back to the actual contract itself, additional signatures would be if you had multiple people, more than 2 that were buying a property or selling a property. Backup addendum would be as you missed out on the house the first time around, but you want to be in a backup position. I'm very surprised we're not seeing more backup contracts because that says that house is not going to make it back out to MLS. If I can be in second position, if buyer number 1 backs out for any reason or no reason, then your buyer automatically jumps into position number 2. And there's really no expense going on ahead of time. It's not like you're going to lose due diligence money or lose earnest money. It's really more of a, I'll kind of wait around and see what's going to happen with this one because I really, really like this house. And if buyer number 1 decides they don't want it, then I'm right here ready to roll. Surprised we're not getting more of those. Lead-based paint, of course, loan assumption. Loan assumption would be if they were assuming some of their loan. With rates where they are right now, if they start going back up to 5% and 6%, you're going to have some people with deeper pockets that are absolutely going to assume a loan at 2.75%, then going out and getting their own new loan at 6%. But when that time comes, we'll have classes. Again, I will not be the one teaching that class, but I will be recommending loan assumption classes. I've only done one of those in my career. New construction addendum would be if it's a new construction, don't have time for that. Owners association would be if it's a new construction and there is an owners association addendum rather than the RPODs. Seller financing would be if the seller was financing, only did that one time in my career as well. Short sale addendum was the, if there's a short sale where there's a shortage of funds, it is anything but short. And then vacation rental addendum would be if we were a vacation rental destination. All right, so if there are other party, attorney or party drafted addenda, you would fill those into the blank. That's where you'd put in like the builder's addendums. So like if the builder has a warranty addendum like Ben Stout Construction has, then it would be the Ben Stout Construction warranty addendum. If they also have some kind of COVID addendum, then it would be the blank COVID addendum. So if a builder says use the 2T because it's a house that's already standing out there on the ground, then that's going to be the addendum. Also, where you'd see that would be as if it was like a relocation company, and the relocation company has some addendums that they had the seller also fill out. Quite often, anytime you see like a servo relocation or anybody like that, there will be some addendums. That's what that blank is for. Appraisal gap addendum, perfect example. Thank you, Jalissa. Yes, for you guys on Zoom, it was the appraisal gap, those addendums we were talking about earlier that folks are now creating. Well, attorneys are now creating and they are using. Let me rephrase that. Everything on page 12 is just legalese. Important. Day is a day. Saturday, Sunday, holiday, doesn't matter. So when it says computation of days, a day is a day. And then, of course, we've got the signature blanks on 13. Please advise your buyer clients, do not wire money to anybody without talking to me first. Do not wire monies. Okay. Page 14 is where you fill in your information as the agent. I appreciate the sentiment when folks try to fill in my information as the agent or go and fill it in. A lot of times, though, they don't know that my license is Billy Scott Harden, as we talked about before. So I get to go back and add on to it. The only thing I would caution you about is, when you start filling in information for the other agent, is that they may not want to receive any information or any mail at their office because they may not come to the office all the time. We've got quite a few virtual office agents at my office on Yadkin Road. When I leave here, I will be going by Edinburgh to put up the under contract sign, yay. And then I will be heading to the office on Yadkin Road because I'm here convenient, but a lot of our agents are not that way. They may live in Harnett County, they may live, somewhere else. When you put down that notice on my side as a listing agent that says that the mailing address is a certain place, what that means is you can drop stuff off at the office and I'm going to be responsible for acknowledging that I've received it. I may not want that. I may want you to only fax it to me, or not fax. I may only want you to email it to me or text me for communication. So be very careful. I'm not going to say that used to be my pet peeve. Don't fill out my stuff. Let me fill out my stuff. I get it. They're trying to be helpful. I'm not a jerk, and I don't mind going by the office, but be thoughtful of kind of what does this say? This says, how can I notify that other agent? So if you turn in a termination of contract at 4:59 by delivering it to Yadkin Road, 4:59, am I probably going to be sitting there at the office to receive that at 4:59? Would I have rather been emailed that at 4:59 so that I could see it in my inbox? So when you're filling in information, talk with the other agent, or if you fill it in, like I said, I'm not going to make a big deal. 15, acknowledgement of receipt of monies. That is when you turn in the earnest money and due diligence money. Okay. Now, Kayla, we've got a few other things in our packet. We have already talked about the additional provisions addendum. So you have a hard copy of that in y'all's packet that you can look at. You also should have the guidelines for the offer to purchase. And then, Kayla, there is additional forms that we have as well, and it's just a outline sheet. So here's that. And then the additional forms that are on the contract, like the FHA, the lead-based paint, the owner's addendum. Remember all those little check boxes, the buyer possession before closing? Here is a little outline, and I'm gonna say it this way. Here's your homework assignment. Number one homework assignment is good at putting these packets together. I hope I've shown their value. Okay. Number two, once you get good at that, what can be the next step of education toward being a good writer of a contract is going to be to take each one of these and maybe one a week. Just look at it, review it, read it, talk about it with your broker in charge, and you can do it one a day if you want to knock it out quicker. But like I mentioned backup contract, and none of y'all have done a backup contract. I've done one backup contract. Jalissa? Right. So she's done for Zoom. She's done one and received one on one of her listings. It's not very often used, but I think it could be very helpful in certain situations that if you have a buyer that isn't in a big hurry to go buy a house, they want to make it sure it's the right house. And they made an offer and it was a competitive offer, but it got beat out by somebody who did an incredibly crazy offer. But they go, man, well, that was really the house we wanted. That was really the one. Okay, let's put in a backup offer. Let's see if this buyer continues on to closing or does not. Because guess what? When that backup offer is sitting there, how about that seller? Is that seller going to feel like they've got an ace in the hole? And that seller may not be as anxious to do repairs or negotiations for that first buyer. And what if you put in a backup offer that was better than your original offer? Could you do that? You missed it the first time around. I'm just saying. I will not advise on whether to do that or not, but just interesting thought. All right, so we're going to take our last break. And I'm going to try to make it through a last hour. I'm not used to doing 4 hours anymore. This is usually where I step to the side and listen a good bit. But I'm going to be doing your last hour of now we're going to take this offer that's been created and we're going to put that into a proceeds estimate. We're going to look at bottom line for the seller. Before we transition out of the contract and filling in the blanks, are there any questions on Zoom, Kayla? Okay, good. And they're still all with us. All right. Any questions from in here? Yes.
This page right here.
The real list?
You get this from Real List?
Real list, yes.
Print that out.
Yes. Yeah, it's a little different too. When you first go to Real List and you type in the address and it pops up the property, you'll tell it to print down in the bottom corner. But what it's going to actually do is it's going to create a download. So you hit print, it'll create a download, and then you're going to have to actually open it. Yeah, it'll download and then open it and then print it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's from Real List. As soon as you type in the address, it'll pop up there for you.
I have a question.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't ever know how to put it into writing, but when you're doing a cash offer, how many weeks do you normally request before closing?
All right. Can you repeat that question?
So when you're doing a cash offer, when you're writing up a regular contract, you put in 30 days or something like that for your closing. What do you do when you're doing cash?
Good point. Okay. So anybody on Zoom that didn't hear that it was asking about if there was a cash offer, what would you do as far as like a 30-day close and things like that? It really depends on, are they going to be doing inspections or not? And so if you have a buyer that has already gone out there, let's say they are a flipper and they are a licensed GC or even just somebody who knows how to evaluate, they may say, we're not going to do any inspections at all. We're not going to have to worry about doing termite. We've already crawled underneath there and we don't see any evidence of termite damage, any past infestation, any present infestation. They're not going to have the heating and air checked out because they're going to put a brand new heating and air system in on it. Then what you would say at that point is you may be able to close in 2 weeks. At that point, it would still be, what does your client want? How quickly do they want to close? But now instead of how quickly can the lender close, now it's how quickly can the attorney do the title search? Because a lot of times with those foreclosures, there may be some background title information that you're going to want to make sure that everything changed hands properly, that everything is, checked out completely by the attorney's office. So now it becomes, how busy is the attorney's office and how quickly can they get that information for us? If they want to go through the process of, I still want to have a home inspection, I still want to have an appraisal, I may have cash in my bank account, but I still want to make sure it appraises for what I'm paying for it, then you're still looking at definitely a 30-day to a 45-day. So does that help?
Yes, thank
We're
you.
good? Okay. All right. So I'm looking at it being right about 12 o'clock. So we're going to go to 12:10. We'll finish up this last little bit. I don't know if y'all got out of class early on the other classes, but honestly, I mean this in all sincerity before we go to break. When I was recruiting and training, and I told you that I did the training for a while, and that was my job. I trained agents on how to do it. This was a 2-hour class, which we went into more in depth. We went into more counties, but that was a 2-hour class. This was a 4-hour class. This was a 2-hour class, and this was a 1-hour class of just what are the pitfalls to have to. This was 10 hours worth of information. I'm trying to get it down to 4 hours. I understand if y'all have somewhere you need to be and somewhere And when I say 9 to 1, it's going to go close to 1 just because I don't know any way that I mean, I know I've had some jokes and some stories and stuff, but hopefully it's made it more entertaining. But I really I don't think I could have just buzzed through it without some of that stuff, without just y'all feeling like you'd been hit in the head with a sledgehammer, because it's a lot. And I'm not trying to say the gravity of our city. It's a big deal. Knowing how to write an offer and how to write an offer well and understanding all of the different parts of it, it's important. So we're going to get to the last hour. Again, sorry that y'all are not going to get to see a different face than mine, but we'll go through that last hour and we'll do a proceeds estimate and present that offer. And we'll get started back at 10 after. Kayla, are we? Better? Okay. So it opens up the conversation for what is happening from contract to closing. And that's what your class on Thursday is going to be. Megan Gerber is going to be here from Caldwell Banker. Megan and I have known each other for a long time. She's a very energetic speaker as well. She's one that I think does a very good job of handling the process from this point to closing. So if you missed out on any of these classes, we are going to offer another series. We're going to try to do it every quarter. Even if you're here for this, it may be that you go, I haven't wrote a contract yet. And man, let me write a contract and see where some of my hiccups are. I've had folks that did that as well. They've come to multiple times to the class. It is open to you. If you say, I'm going to do it from Zoom, fantastic, and kind of tune in for the part that you want. But Megan will be talking to you about from contract to closing. What are the things that you should be doing, like paperwork to the attorney, like inspections, insurance, talking to your client about insurance and things like that. So this form 760, I am not sure because this is not something I can validate, but I trust my broker in charge wholeheartedly. He says that in our files, if we'll have one of these every single time, that it is what errors and omissions insurance is looking for. So when you have E&O insurance and somebody wants to bring a claim against you and they're wanting to file a suit against you, he said, if you'll have this form, I promise you, you're going to be in perfect shape for E&O to take over. Because this shows that you were doing your job to advise the client, and then the client made a decision. If they chose not to have a home inspection and then the house was about, or let's say termites, they chose not to have a termite inspection done, and you have it on here that it was waived because it was a cash deal. Doesn't have to have one. FHA loans don't have to have one. Conventional loans don't have to have one. VA has to have one. I've never seen a VA loan that didn't require a termite inspection. But a conventional loan, they don't care if you check for termites or not. So let's say that they don't check for termites, and then lo and behold, they start having problems. They realize there's termites and there's all this damage. They want to blame you. You didn't tell them they could have a home or a termite inspection. Yeah, I did. Awesome form. All right, so now we're going to go into a not so awesome form, but no, I'm just kidding. This is my form for a proceeds estimate. Again, understand I'm an old math teacher. And so I don't mind numbers. I absolutely would do this by hand versus setting up an Excel spreadsheet. For the ones of you that are here, let me just ask, y'all have gotten the Dropbox about this class, right? Have they already been sent one out?
It was a link.
There was a link. All right.
Yes, I got it.
If you can go back to the email, and if you want to look at your email before you leave here today, I would suggest doing that, especially if you like Excel and you are proficient at Excel. Sunny Ryder has an Excel program that she has shared with everybody that calculates everything for you. So when you put in the sales price and you put in, these closing costs and everything, it does all the calculations for you. I personally do it myself. And I do an estimate of what the costs are going to be. And so this is my proceeds estimate that I use. You're welcome to use it, but it is going to be where you have to calculate things by hand. It's kind of like you remember when classes you had to use you had to do everything by hand, or then you could use the computer. There was a calculator active and inactive. All right. Most of you probably like the calculator active. That's what Sony's Excel spreadsheet is. I'm the calculator inactive side of things. Okay, which we're going to use a calculator, but that's the best thing I can give.
This doesn't have that cell estimated net sheet on it. It doesn't
Nice.
calculate it all.
Okay, so on Zip Forms, for the folks on Zoom that may not have heard that, Jalissa said that Zip Forms also has a proceeds estimate calculator that you can get through the Zip Forms and use. And it does do all the calculations for you once you type in the number.
Yeah, just like what you have.
Okay.
Calculate, you enter the number and calculates everything, adds them all up.
Excellent. It is a fillable form then to where you can fill it in and get it to do that. Awesome. All right, good. So I'm behind the times then. I need to update. All right. So with this, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the numbers, because on our outline, of course, what we said we were going to do was to create a proceeds estimate for our seller. Now, I will always put together a proceeds estimate as a pre-listing estimate. So before I ever list the home, I'm going to tell them if we list it at this price, and we get these concessions, we get this request, which right now would be no closing costs, no home warranty. This is what we can look at as far as a bottom line. So when I go out there to do that, and that listing paperwork, that appointment for me is a second appointment where I go out there and actually say, we're ready to list this house, or I call them on the phone and we talk about it. There would be a pre-listing estimate put together at their list price of $225. So they're going to be a little bit familiar with this. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the terms of the actual offer that we have, and I'm going to talk to them and put together a proceeds estimate from that. Now, with the proceeds estimate that we've got, I'm going to just start all over on a new sheet here, and we'll go from the top. So our sales price that we were offering, hopefully we can remember from this, the sales price that was being offered to our sellers was $235,000. So I'm just going to put 235,000. That's our base point. Now, prorated taxes. How am I going to figure out prorated taxes? Well, I'm going to go to my real list, and I'm going to look up what the tax bill says. And so the tax bill for this year, for 2020, for last year, was $2,614. Now, y'all understand that the attorney is going to sit there and they're going to calculate it to the day. So they're going to divide by 365. They're going to multiply by the number of days. I'm going to take our approximated closing date of October the 6th, or whatever date we chose, 30 days from now. And so I'm going to just divide it into months. So I'm going to take it and say 2614 divided by 12. And this is what her program can do for you. That's going to put me at $217.83 per month on average. So I'm going to round that off to $220 a month, and I'm going to multiply that through. Now, right here, it says that we were looking at closing on October the 6th. So we're going to use about, because remember, the contract has a statement saying it could go 7 days past closing. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the middle of the month. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to multiply that by, let's see, middle of October would be 9 full months and half of a 10th month. So that would be 9.5 months, which would put me at $2,090. So tax bill, divide by 12, multiply by the number of months. And if you wanted to just do a full month, just do 10 full months. Because would you rather tell them too much for taxes or too little for taxes? You'd rather tell them too much so they make more money when they get to the closing table than less money, right? Prepare them for the worst, get the best. Then you look a lot better than preparing them for not enough. Okay, so any questions on how to get the taxes? All right. Deed prep, that is with your attorney. Now, if you do have some attorneys that are your preferred attorneys, you're going to probably know what their costs are going to be. And now it's going to fluctuate, of course, if you've got an in-town buyer that's going to come in and sign all their paperwork here. They're going to go by and pick up a check when the checks get ready versus, and let's say they already own, let's put three things together. They live in town, they own the house outright with no payoff, and they're going to pick up a check. That saves the money from having to have a wire transfer to pay off their mortgage. That saves having a sticker, a FedEx label, having to go out to them with them sending the paperwork back because they're not in town. And they're here to pick up a check. They're going to have to get a wire transfer for their proceeds, or they're going to have a certified letter go out for their mail, right? All of those things are going to cost money. The attorney is going to charge you for every one of those items. That if the seller doesn't have a payoff, they live here in town and they're going to go by and pick up the check, that just saved them money. Again, what I would rather do though is prepare for the overage. And I found that $500 is the number that I like to use. We should not go above the $500 threshold unless there's something extra that has to be done. Okay, so that situation where I told you about husband and wife split, no deed was recorded, both of them got remarried. That, of course, was a higher than $500 estimate. But I told them I don't really know how much to put in here because I don't know how much it's going to cost. So I'm going to use $1,000 in that situation. And it certainly turned out to be less than $1,000 on my sellers. Okay. $500, I think, is a very good estimate that should keep you to where you have told them enough. And in most cases, it's going to give you a little cushion because it's probably not going to cost. Again, would you rather tell them too much? Or would you rather say, oh, you can get it done for $300 and then it ends up costing $425? Tell them 500 comes in at $425, you're golden. Tell them 300 and it comes in at $425, they're not going to be happy. Okay. Any questions on the deed prep? That is all the attorney, I call it deed prep. That's all of the attorneys preparing the documents, wire transfers, paying off their mortgages, preparing the deed, everything they're going to do. All right. So revenue stamps, y'all remember this from school, from class. I don't know how the teacher taught you to do it, but it's $2 per 1,000. So I'm going to drop the zeros. That leaves me with 235. I'm going to multiply by 2. And 235 times 2 is going to be 470. So that's going to be a minus 470. I know how they probably did. They probably told you to divide by 500. Y'all can check my math to make sure. That seems to be the way that the instructors like to do it. All right. So those are the fees that are going to be on the seller every single time, unless the buyer, like we talked about, chooses to pick up those fees. Now what we're looking at is the buyer's closing expenses. They didn't ask for any. Home warranty, we didn't ask for any. Repairs miscellaneous, that again would be if somebody said they wanted the grass to be cut, estimate for them having their grass cut because they may have already moved out of the house, even if it's an occupied home where the homeowner cuts the grass, go ahead and put in $100. Say, look, this would be $100 set aside that if you're able to cut your grass yourself, you save $100, Mr. Seller, Mr. Miss Seller. But if you get so busy trying to move out and you run out of time, here's $100 already set aside that we have it already planned that will take care of getting that grass cut. Or I know you keep a very beautiful house and you keep it very clean, but you may get into a rush to get that house cleaned. And so let's go ahead and put $400 aside to go ahead and kind of have set there that if something happens that you run out of time, I don't want you to be stressed. I want to be a pressure release valve. So when you go, Scott, I just can't get this place cleaned up for the walkthrough. Okay, that's no problem. Let's call a cleaning company. Let's get them in here. That way they've already got some money set aside for some miscellaneous. I normally on here put that. Because right now, I don't know what repairs are going to be asked for, and I don't know what repairs are going to be agreed upon. There's nothing miscellaneous on the contract, but I don't know what they're going to find when they start doing inspections. Now, we talked about on the contract, Mr. and Miss Seller, on the contract, it says you can sell it as is. The property is being sold in its current condition. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but right now, there may be some repairs that you're not aware of. There may be some repairs that I'm not aware of that are not visible to us from the view that we have. And so right now, that's still just a question mark. We don't have to do repairs, but there may be a time when we decide to do repairs. So let's just leave that kind of open for now. As far as the commission, we talked about commissions and we are not going to talk about them in here. So we're going to say that I am working pro bono. Y'all understand, please, please, please do not talk about commissions with people that are not inside of your own firm. That is a big, big, big no-no. Okay, that would be like price fixing. So in a room like this, we are not going to, but you would fill in whatever amount you are going to be getting for a commission. Okay, that's it. I can get to that point. I can figure out what we've got going on. If somebody will take a calculator rather than me making a mistake. Any questions on any of those items? This is what I love about a seller. And Jalissa says she does mostly sellers. It's easy. I mean, the contract says you're going to close on a certain date. Okay, let's go through from the very top. The only way this price is going to change is if the seller agrees to change the price. Contract says 235. If the appraisal comes in low, does that seller have to drop the price? No, they don't have to do, no. So the only way that price is going to change is if the seller agrees to a price change, and you can do a brand new one for them to see what their proceeds would be before making that decision. I would suggest that. Taxes, we calculated it to the month. Let's say it runs an extra week. Is it really going to make that big of a difference between 2090? Maybe it's 2,150 now, right? Taxes per day. If we're taking $2,600 divided by 365 days, that's $7 a day. Closing runs over by 10 days, that number changes by 70 bucks. I'm not going to miss it by very much. All right. Deed prep. Again, the attorney fees are the attorney fees. This is certainly a figure that I know for the folks that I work with is going to be enough to cover a seller. Only in the happenstance of some kind of extra work that has to be done would it go any higher. And then, of course, the revenue stamps are not going to change unless the price changes, and the revenue stamps are not going to go up. If anything, if the price goes down, the revenue stamps are going to go down. Sellers told me what they want. They don't want any closing. They don't want any home warranty. The only question mark I have is, do we have any repairs that are going to need to be done that's going to have to be addressed? It's simple. Representing a seller is very, very easy to predict, right? When you're representing that buyer and you're writing that offer, is it very easy to predict what's going to happen with your offer? Is it easy to predict what another buyer is out there doing with their agent at the exact same time? That's why sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 offers before you get that buyer under contract. I've experienced that. I haven't wrote that many. I've written 3. And it was amazing to me. And I understand the buyer liked the house a lot better, but the last one that I had, it was amazing to me to see the progression from the first offer and how they wanted to write it, even with my counsel, to how they wrote that third offer. Because they got, ooh, I'm gonna have to do this. Ooh, this would be something that would help. It's one thing to tell them, but when they lose out a time or two, nobody likes losing. But it is not predictive. I can't predict whether their offer is going to be accepted or not. I've actually had offers that have been accepted that were full price in this market that we're in right now, to whereas in other cases, there's been as much as $25,000 above full price. I can't predict that. Their bottom line, I can predict pretty good. The only thing that I can't predict very good, and did anybody calculate those numbers for me?
Yeah.
How much we got?
231,500.
231,940. The only thing that sometimes, does come into is how much do they actually owe? Because I know on this real list that they got a loan out in 2020 for 144. Y'all remember us seeing that before? Again, all of this information helps. As an agent, it helps me to understand. I'm going to say, do as I say, not as I do. I don't make people provide me a payoff statement or a bank statement, but I probably should. When I sit down on that listing appointment, I should probably ask them for a copy of their principal balance so that I know that they're telling me the truth, that it's not going to be a short sale. When I see $144,000 on that, I know that it should be 144 or less. And I know we are projecting a number that's less than 144 or less. So I don't really ever ask them what their current balance is. Is it possible, though, that with the foreclosures being held off, is it possible that somebody that may have owed 144 in 2020 never made a payment? And now all those months of interest have now been added on for 12 months worth of interest. And is it possible that there are late fees and attorney fees that have been added on? And that property is going to go into foreclosure as soon as that moratorium is lifted. VA has a separate moratorium from what I understand. September 30th is their deadline. They're giving the veteran people, they don't care what the rest of the world is doing. VA loans are not going to foreclose right now on any VA veteran until September 30th, period. They don't care what CDC says. They don't care what anybody says. VA says September 30th. But is it possible, let's say the numbers were closer. Let's say that the numbers, were they had borrowed 220 back in 2020. They've only owned the house for a year. We could be in a little bit of a different margin, right? This is that thing that I would say that I don't do, that I'm going to suggest that you do. And that is, it would be a very good conversation to have of, can you send over a copy of your principal balance for your account? You can black out the numbers of your account, but just so we have a good idea of exactly what your principal balance is and what your escrow account is. I haven't been burned yet, or some wood. And I hope to think that people are not going to lie to me. But that's one of the things that all of us in this business are going to have things we could do better. And that's just something, until I teach this class, I'm going to be honest with you, until I teach this class, and it's been a long time since I've taught this part of the class, I really don't even think about it. I just ask them, how much you owe on it? They tell me, oh, we owe 142. That sounds about right. 142 it is. So I put 142 in for their payoff amount. So the next blank down, we've got the total of 231,940 minus what their payoff is, and that's where I would expect their proceeds to be. It's that simple. If something changes during the process and they agree to a reduction in the appraisal price, then we reflect that reduction in the appraisal price. If they end up doing repairs and you want to figure in a new proceeds estimate and put in there, okay, guys, y'all have agreed to an estimate that's going to cost $3,300. Let me, before we sign this addendum to the contract or before we sign this due diligence request, Mr. Miss Seller, let me do you a new proceeds estimate. How long did that take us? 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Take the time, do them a new proceeds estimate. And if you want to really protect yourself, have them sign off on it. There's no signature blank on here, but if you really wanted to have them say, yes, I understand this is what I'm now going to make, and this is what you're projecting that I'm going to make. Just so, again, it doesn't come back to a he said, she said, well, I thought I was going to make 75,000. Do you make them sign your proceeds?
Yes, and that good form at the top makes it very clear, hey, this is just an estimate.
Right.
And change and then sign, yeah.
Yep.
Signing saying that they know we've discussed.
So Zoom World, Jalissa, another experienced agent, said, yeah, she absolutely uses the zip forms version. It does have a place where they can sign on it, and she does advise them and have them sign that, just saying this, hey, this is the information I've got. This is the best estimate I can do. It is not a guarantee. So good practice. All right. Any questions on that? Now, a question came up over the break, Kayla, I'm going to address now, because we just talked about this appraisal. If the appraisal came in low and you renegotiated for the lower price as a seller, you can, but you don't have to. The question was, is that a breach of contract if the seller says they're not going to lower the price? And the answer to that is no. You made a promise. When you signed your name on the paper, you made a promise that says you're going to pay them $235,000. You are now the one in breach of contract. Mr. and Ms. Buyer, because you are no longer paying. I don't care what it says. Well, I don't care what it appraises for. You said you would pay $235,000 to the seller. You're not. Oh, but my loan has repairs. I don't have to do repairs. Your lender wants repairs done? Go do the repairs. Now that opens up a whole nother can of worms with as a seller, do I want a buyer and a buyer's contractor doing repairs to my personal home? Probably not.
As a buyer, do you want to do that on someone else's property?
On a buyer, are you wanting to spend, the comment was made, as a buyer, do you want to spend money on a house you don't yet own? That's a whole nother but here's the thing, it is not a breach. So the person asked a question on Zoom, appraisal comes in at 210. It's still not a breach of contract. If the seller says, I'm not going to sell it at 210, I'm not going to sell it at 215, I'm not going to sell it at 220, I'll sell it at 235. And if the seller says, I'll sell it at 235, and the buyer says, I'm backing out, that is not a breach. Again, that is a buyer. And I have had some buyers that I've said it that way too, that when you put this 235, you are making a promise to pay 235 regardless. There could be some things in the meantime that happen that change that. But understand, when you make that offer of 235, it is a dedication or a promise that you'll give them 235. And if you don't give them 235, even if it's not worth 235, even if the HVAC is broken, if you don't give them 235, you're not going to get the money back. So, question.
I have two.
Mhm.
So what was the document titled on the form? The one that's like that?
Seller estimated net sheet.
Seller estimated net sheet. Don't have any numbers on that one. I was going to say Jalissa has her computer, so she's going to pull it up. But seller estimated net sheet. Okay, perfect. And you said another one?
And then the other question is, what if the seller asked for more than they originally listed it at?
On a counter offer? I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm going to explain it from this way, that if a seller has it listed, like in this case for 225, and a buyer gives them an offer of 225 and says, I want to counter it back at 230, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I think it's bad business. If you wanted 230, you should have listed it at 230. But I don't think there's any repercussions for a seller that says a seller has to sell their house just because they got a full price offer. So I don't think that if that's what the question was asking, if you had a seller that said they wanted 225 in MLS and then turned around and you sent them an offer for 225 or 226 or 227, and they said, I'm not going to take that offer, I don't think that's breaking any rules or any laws that they can't do. They can negotiate that. Question?
I would have taken that question to mean, what if the inspection came back and the house was worth 250?
Could the seller?
I'll say,
Okay.
"Now I want 250."
All right, so Zoom people, we've got, what if it was that the offer was at 235, you're under contract at 235, the appraisal comes in at 250, and the seller says, well, I'm no longer going to sell it at 235, I'm going to raise the price up. At that point in time, yeah, they're a breach of contract. Because just like you made a promise to pay them 235, they made a promise to you to sell it to you at 235, regardless of what it's worth. They said, I'll sell it to you at 235. So yeah, if whoever had that question, Kayla, if that was what they were kind of getting at and driving at, then yeah, absolutely.
That form is form 110.
Form is 110. The seller estimated net sheet, form 110. All right, so last but not least, we've gone over the contract and filled in the blanks. And so we're going to go through now and just what are some of the key terms for a seller? We're going to be flipping through these pages pretty quickly though. So we're going back to the offer to purchase and contract. And Kayla, I might have asked you to close that one out. If I did, I do apologize, but it's going to be hard to kind of keep up with me anyway. So it may be easier to, yeah, there we go. All right. So when I call up that seller and I say, I have fantastic news, we've got an offer on your property, I'm emailing over to you a net proceeds. So I have this sheet filled out for them. I have you a net proceeds and I've got the offer for us to review. So the first thing on the net proceeds is we've got all the information right there. Now, I will say this, that I also put up in the corner right here a few little notes. So on my sheet, I would put on there $10,000. I would have this up in the corner of $10,000 of DD money and then 0 of earnest money. And I would have up in the corner, I'm gonna make a due diligence date of 2 weeks out. So I think we put down the due diligence date would be 9/21. And then the earnest money closing date was 10/6. Now, we're gonna say that it was a VA loan. We're gonna say that they did ask for the fridge to stay. And we're gonna say that they do not have a home to sell or rent. I'll just put no home to sell. So I make a few other little notes up there in the corner of some things that would be important to discuss with my seller. And so as we start looking at the bottom line, I'm like, okay, here's where the bottom line is. Now let's get into some of the smaller details, some of the fine print, as I refer to it to my sellers. So everything on page 1, we've already covered. We've got the purchase price, we've got the due diligence, we've got the earnest money. They're putting $10,000 of due diligence, 0 earnest money. If you haven't already explained that to your seller, make sure you explain to them what the earnest money and due diligence. For me, I have, but $10,000 due diligence is a check made out to you directly, Mr. and Miss Seller. It's a thank you for signing their offer and accepting their offer. So once you sign their offer and we can get that check in hand, you can go and blow it. You can spend it, you can put it in the bank, you can do whatever, but this is a non-refundable deposit. The only way they will get that money back is if they close, it counts as a credit, or if you breach contract, which means you refuse to sell them the house, basically. Now, the 0 earnest money is going to be held with the attorney's office. It will stay in that attorney's account. So they're looking at putting $10,000 of due diligence money, no earnest money. Mr. and Miss Seller, here's how I would look at it. They're asking you to have your home off the market basically for the next 2 weeks. And if they back out for any reason or no reason, you get to keep their $10,000. Is that enough to cover your carrying cost? And I assume it would be. It's not costing you more than $10,000 to hold on to this house for the next 2 weeks. So worst case scenario, and this is more of a conversation when somebody wants to give you $500 or $1,000, right? If they're giving you $1,000 of due diligence money, that means that if they back out on you at 4:59 on the 21st of September, you will have $1,000. Not this scenario, but on that. Is $1,000 going to be enough? Well, if you've got a little couple that has a $80,000 house, yeah. If you have a house that is a $750,000 house, then $1,000 may not be enough to cover the house payment for that vacant house, right? It's going to make a difference if it's vacant or if it's occupied. Because now the carrying costs are different if you're still living in it or if you're sitting there and you're in another place. So that's the question to ask is this enough money? And in this situation, yes, $10,000 is more than enough money for the next 2 weeks, okay? Now, if they were to carry us to the very end, the contract says that we're going to be patient for up to 7 days past their target because nobody knows if this target is going to work or not. Everybody's going to be targeting Mr. and Miss Seller for October the 6th. But if there were delays, we're going to be patient up until October the 13th. So if they ask you to keep your home off the market basically for the next month and a half, because we're at the 1st of September to the middle of October, these two combined, would $10,000 be enough? And if the answer is yes, again, what if it was 1,000 and 2,000? Then the question would be, is $3,000 enough? Okay. Then we go into, so that's page 1, due diligence, earnest money. Now the dates that we've just talked about are going to be the date of September 21st. It's kind of like a pendulum swinging. Up until September the 21st, we've got $10,000. Once we pass over that, we end up with the earnest money, which in this case is a 0. So we still got $10,000. Okay. But if you were explaining it to them as 1,000, 2,000, you've got $1,000 up until 5 p.m. on the 21st. Once we break the threshold of September 21st, then the other 2,000 becomes in jeopardy. Now, Mr. and Miss Seller, there is one caveat because this is a VA loan. If the appraisal comes in low and you decide not to sell it at that lower price, then they would be able to get this 2,000. They still wouldn't get the 1,000 back, but they would be able to get that other 2,000 back. That's important for a seller to understand. If it is a VA or an FHA, that's why I have that VA FHA there, whatever loan type there is, I have right there. Okay. So that's page 2. Page 3. You said that you did not have anything on that list that you were going to take with you. When we sat down on the listing, that's still the case? All right, good. And they are not asking for any of your personal belongings. So you can take the refrigerator, the washer, dryer, bless you. You can take the curtains, all that kind of stuff. Now, like the rods would have to stay, but the curtains would go. The blinds would have to stay. Anything that's basically not nailed, screwed, or glued to your property is going to be stuff that you can take with you the way we have written, and that's still the case. Just make sure with them that that is the case. Now, on page 6, this is something the buyer sees. This is something that the buyer signs off on. On page 6, it says very clearly right here, Mr. and Ms. Sutherland, the property is being sold in its current condition. You may, but are not obligated to negotiate for repairs. Now, I'm going to say it this way. Why are we going to run off a buyer that's paying us $10,000 more if it's a legitimate concern? Because here's the thing. Let's say a home inspection is done and they find that there is a legitimate repair to the electrical, to the plumbing, to the heating and air, and it's going to foundation, and it's going to be something that has to be addressed. Now that we have that information, I'm going to have to disclose it to every single buyer because it becomes a material fact. Do you think we're going to get, if we're disclosing that there's a problem with the foundation, do you think we're going to be getting other buyers that are going to be willing to give us $10,000 above full price with that knowledge up front? So we're probably not going to get nearly as good of offers, and they're still going to want us to fix it. So we need to evaluate when the time comes and a home inspection comes in, is this something we're going to have to do for every buyer? Because if we're going to have to do it for every buyer, why are we running this buyer off just to have to do it? And in the very worst case scenario, we don't do it, we disclose it, we never get an offer, and you hold on to it as a rental. Are you still going to have to fix it? Like, for example, if there's termites or if the HVAC is not working. If the HVAC is not working, are you going to be able to rent that house to anybody? And I literally have that conversation with my sellers. I'm not telling them they have to do anything. I'm telling them the contract says they don't. But use a little common sense. Why are we running this buyer off just to go back out on the market? And I have the same conversation again with them once we get a due diligence request. Now, if somebody's talking about a door that, rubs on the thing or needs some weather stripping, if you want to tell them no, Mr. and Ms. Seller, tell them no. But if we're talking about by the back door, there's been a leak that's coming in and we've got subfloor that's already rotten through on the back. I mean, as a seller, are you going to leave that? No, because what buyer is going to want to buy it with a leak by the back door that has a rotten subfloor? Are we going to find a buyer that really wants that one for full price or above? And are you going to leave it that way for the next 10 years while you rent it out? It makes no sense. So be upfront with folks about they don't have to do repairs, but that's why I put a question mark right here. Because we need to evaluate it once we see, are there any legitimate concerns? Have that conversation up front. It'll help you down the road. As far as what else do I need to tell my sellers? Make sure if there are HOA on page 9, just make sure that if there's been any changes to the HOA. I did have a situation down here on 700 Haymount that we went on the market before we could get under contract, but it very likely could have happened after contract. There was an assessment that got put on by the HOA. So my seller had to pay an extra $950 for that assessment prior to closing. So ask them the question about the HOA, if there is an HOA, because things can change at any given time with an HOA. As far as, page 9 also, if you've got an occupied home, under paragraph 8C, it talks about access to the property. Explain to them that we will have to be opening our home up and kind of explain to them how many folks are going to be coming out there. There could be a home inspector, termite inspector, appraiser. There could be a HVAC inspection. There could be a septic inspection. There could be a well inspection. There could explain to them, there could be a radon inspection. So explain to them that there could be a number of different inspections that are going on. we should still know about it if it's occupied. Now, if it's vacant, I don't go into that conversation with the sellers necessarily. It's just as they happen. They're having this inspection, they're having that inspection. But if you've got an owner that's living in the home, make sure they understand it may be a little bit of a revolving door during this next 2 to 3 weeks of inspection period. D is very big to talk to your sellers about. It says seller shall remove all personal property which is not part of the purchase and all the garbage and debris. That I have a conversation at the time of offer that just says, look, anything that's not permanently fixed to the home needs to go. If you're planning on leaving those paint cans or you're planning on leaving those flooring, extra flooring tiles that you have, we need to get permission before you leave that. Yes, I think the flooring tiles would be absolutely good to have. Sometimes I lie and tell them, yes, I'd love to have the paint so I could do touch up. And I go, there's no way in hell I keep that. I'm sorry. There's no way I keep those paint colors, but I still tell them, yeah, I know you want to leave them the paint. So if they need to do touch up work, but they may want to have their own paint. And so this says we would need to remove everything. If we leave anything, we need to get permission to leave it.
The trash, happens all the time, where they leave so much trash out there. Well, the trash is being picked up tomorrow.
Right.
They didn't schedule it or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Exactly. And that's where that says, that it needs to be, let's plan ahead for that. Let's see if we can go ahead and get that taken care of. The comment for you guys on Zoom was about the trash. The only other thing that I really talked to them about big is about the delay in settlement, which we hinted at right here with the 10-6, that's a target. When we get to that part of the contract, and I do this, I go over the proceeds estimate, I go over these little notes, and then we go through the contract, just, hey, I'm going to hit you with some highlights. When you get to that delay in settlement, please talk to them about that, everybody's going to try to hit the 6th of October, but there is no guarantee. There's a lot of things that are outside the buyer's control, their control, the agent's control. There's a lot of things that happen. I quite often bring up hurricanes. The insurance company will not bind a property if it's while a hurricane is going on. So if they're projecting a hurricane to hit this area and your closing date is for October 6th and they're saying a hurricane is going to hit on October 6th or 7th or 8th, that buyer can't close even if they want to, because the insurance company is not going to provide them with insurance. Think about it. Do you want to be the insurance company that insured something on the 6th and the hurricane hits on 7th and takes that house out? Or do you want to refuse to do binder and be the one that gets it on the 8th once you know the house is still there? I get it. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the insurance company putting insurance on a property either if I could hold up the insurance policy going into place. And that's what I normally use is, look, there's sometimes it's things outside of our control. We cannot control acts of God. And if something like that does happen, understand everybody's going to be trying to do, everybody's going to be wanting to do, but nobody can do. At that point, we have to be patient. The hurricane is going to pass through. Within a 7-day window, we should have the insurance able to be gotten back in place, or else we got a bigger problem. And then, of course, we can move forward with the sale. But explain to them about that. That's really the last thing. I'll open it up. Jalissa, do you hit anything else with the seller that's hey, let's think about this ahead of time before we?
I like to tell them, I don't know about you, but I've had some that they think that if the buyer is finding at 2 o'clock, that they'll have the money that day. So we've not set those expectations, we've had problems. So I like to let them know they won't get, it may be 48 hours.
Right. Good deal. All right. So Jalissa just mentioned that a lot of sellers are in areas to where other states will give you a check at the closing table. So when the buyer signs, they get their keys, seller signs, they get their money. We're not that way around Fayetteville. There may be parts of North Carolina that still do that, but we are not. It would be that it would have to go through the whole recording process, just like for the buyer getting their keys. So she says that she definitely, and I do too, I missed that one as I was going through. We do go ahead and let them know that, hey, it's going to be recorded. It'll be out of your name, but anticipate that it may be the next day or 48 hours before you actually get the proceeds. And that's just because the attorney's office has to make sure everything has gone through with the recording before they can cut checks. Because at that point in time, it's still your house and they can't give you money on something you still own until they know that you are no longer the owner. And then it may take time to get a check out to you, or it may take time to get that wire transfer initiated because they may have other closings that they're going through and other files they're looking at. So very good point. Any questions about working? Seller's so much easier, isn't it? Any questions on Zoom? Nope. All right. I'm going to go back to the very beginning and just wrap up by saying again, if I can be of assistance to you, please feel free to reach out. I'm going to say, take advantage of everything you can here at the association with classes like this. Take advantage of when we start having luncheons again, when we start having the Realtor Rally again, when we start, getting together, because you'll learn stuff from being around people. I come to class all the time and learn stuff. Again, my learning may be a small piece, but it may be a small piece that's very, very important to my business that does help me do my business better. And right now you're going to absolutely feel like that, man, I don't know. I'm scared. I don't want to do this. I'm scared of making a mistake. Please don't. Have your broker in charge, have your mentor there with you, have them help you. It's one of those things that you're never going to know everything. I've been in the business a long time and I still don't know everything. Things happen that hit me that I wasn't expecting. And finishing up as I started off, remember we talked about me being a referral agent? Father-in-law was the one that was broker in charge. I guarantee you, and he would say this, and my mother-in-law would say this. He looked at my mother-in-law and said, that boy will never sell a house because he will overanalyze everything. I am a lot that way, but I've been okay. I got past it. I was nervous. I felt like I was going to make a mistake. I was scared to make a mistake, but we're all human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do the best we possibly can. We're going to try the hardest that we can. We're going to look out for our clients the best that we can. And man, I would love to see where you guys are, because right now you may have a path of where you think you're going to be. I never, ever, ever envisioned where I am right now even 5 years into it, I didn't envision it. So I wish you the very best. If I can help you, please do. I hope I can see you some more in some classes. Come see me in some CE classes when you need your continuing education updates in your elective classes, and the board will promote them for me and everything. So I don't know that I'll be doing Zoom. It's going to have to be in person, because Zoom people, I appreciate y'all being here, but I'm just not a real comfortable Zoom person. But y'all have a great day. Thanks for coming today. If I can help, let me know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You have a great day.
This guy giving me a hard time now. He's like, man, what if I do?
Thank you.
Ooh.
Thank you. Have a great day.